440794 or contact your travel professional.
If you owe the IRS, you have a legal issue, and you need the Lance Drury Law Firm. We'll protect your rights. Log on at lancedrurylaw.com or call us toll-free at 888-367-6512.
That is exactly what I needed to hear.
Thank God someone here knows what you're talking about.
That's us. That's right. Gotta love this American ride.
All right, you need to take the time and get the full picture.
Come on, turn the radio on. It's Saturday and I won't be long.
Don't get me wrong, I love the ladies. I mean, they rev my engine, but they don't belong in the newsroom. It is Anchor Man, not Anchor Lady.
What do you want from me? I'm not America's sweetheart.
Goodness sake, kid. Keep your voice down. Your father's listening to the radio.
I'm not America's sweetheart.
This is the Annie Frey Show. Good afternoon. Hey, Brad Young sitting in today for Annie Frey. She's out today, but she should be back tomorrow. In the meantime, we're going to have 3 hours of fun and frivolity here on St. Louis's home for conservative talk, 97.1 FM Talk. Mr. Brad Range, good afternoon, sir.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well, and I got a question for you.
Okay.
Are you tired, or rather, are you missing all of the political commercials?
Am I missing them?
Yes.
No.
You're not?
No, I'm not missing them. As many of y'all know, I'm an Illinois resident, and some of the commercials that I would get, the political commercials I found rather entertaining because of just the bologna sausage that was in them and stuff like that. So, but no, I don't miss them.
Well, I don't know of anyone who's missing them, but I had this great idea the other night, and here's my idea, and I want to see what you think about it. You ever seen the show Mystery Science Theater 3000?
Yes.
Okay, I'm a big fan. Okay, a big fan of that show because I've always loved the bad movies. Mm-hmm. And then combining it with mocking it for the entire movie, like live streaming mocking of bad movies. That's what I would do at home. And so I was just astounded when that show came on the air. I thought, I've been doing this for years, and now it's a show. Why didn't I think of it?
And they're making money on it.
And they're making money on it, and I'm a schmuck sitting on my couch, right? So I've got this great idea that we should live stream the worst political ads, and then a la Mystery Science Theater 3000, we could mock them on like the commercial channel or something, or a YouTube channel, where you would mock the political ads. I think before I let the ideas escape me, so now I'm going to capture this idea. What do you think of that idea?
I think it'll sell.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you get lots of people watching it because there would just be this steady stream of bad commercials. You could mock the candidates. You could mock how so many of these political ads look exactly the same. I mean, there's so much material there.
A lot of formulaic stuff in there, like the very sad, dirgy music right at the beginning.
Or how about graying out the candidate when they always put them in a gray, like in a gray picture, right?
Right.
Ooh, that's original. Never thought of that before.
And then there's always the flip. But our candidate.
And then the music changes. It becomes happy. We're going to smell, the air is going to smell better. The food is going to taste better if you just elect this candidate.
Right.
So I've got to make this a deal here on YouTube to do a Mystery Science Theater 3000 treatment of bad political ads. So if I make that happen, my friend, I will reach out to you.
Right, because I'm entitled to half because I was here at the moment of inspiration.
No. I thought of this a couple of days ago.
Oh, no.
Yeah, and I wrote it down, too.
Yeah, you can't prove that. We've got record.
I think I mentioned it on Camel X on Wednesday night last week. So I think I've got proof, my friend.
You better have proof because I got it right now.
I know, but I've covered my tracks. Speaking of covering your tracks, there's an issue that I want to dive into in the first segment. As most of you know, I'm an attorney in my real job. And so when I'm analyzing things at the courts, whether it's at the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court, I'm putting on my legal hat whenever I go through these issues. And one of the issues that broke yesterday, I don't know if you heard about it, Mr. Range, but the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals right here in St. Louis invalidated and put a stay, rather, on the Biden student loan. It's not a student loan forgiveness. It's a transfer of debt from individuals to all of the taxpayers of the United States. So it's a transfer of debt, not elimination of debt. But that happened right here in St. Louis. Did you hear about that?
I heard that that a court had put a hold on it, but I didn't know it was the Eighth Circuit.
Well, there was two courts, and this is what frustrates me about mainstream media, is that they, and not that you have to be an attorney to understand this stuff, because you don't, but they gloss over so many things that are important, and then they focus on the minors. They eliminate the majors and focus on the minors. Case in point, there was a Texas federal district court judge a couple of days prior who put a hold on the Biden student loan debt transfer program. And that was all across the mainstream media. But that was just a federal district judge. But this is the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals. That's at the appellate level. The only thing above the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals is the Supreme Court.
Right.
Much more important. And the network simply pretty much by and large ignored the story because they didn't understand the significance of a Court of Appeals decision versus a district court judge opinion.
Right.
And what's amazing about this is, and I want to talk about this for a minute, because it's almost like a law school exam. It brings together so many elements of how attorneys analyze issues. Real quick story. My first semester in law school, I don't mind sharing this with you. My first semester in law school, I had all D's, 100% all D's. And I thought, oh my goodness, what am I doing here? My second semester, I had all A's. Now, what's the difference between all D's and all A's? Wow, how did I make that jump? I didn't suddenly get any smarter. I just started thinking like a lawyer, and then bingo, it clicked in. So legal analysis takes a little bit of effort here. But here's the thing in this case that to me is fascinating from a legal standpoint. If you've heard the phrase, haven't you? You can sue anybody for any reason.
Yes.
Okay. That's only partially true. Okay. It's not a completely truism. It's almost true. Here's the difference. You have to be harmed in something in order to sue somebody. So if you wanted to sue me for being bald, I mean, the only damages you have today to my status as being follically challenged is the lights in the studio might blind your eyes as they bounce off my head.
Right.
Okay. For those who are watching online streaming, you can see, listen, I'm really follically challenged. I've been so since I was 19, so it's nothing new. But otherwise, you have to be damaged. And so that's been the problem with this student loan debt transfer is who's damaged by this. If somebody's going to come to you and say, Brad Range, we're going to take away $20,000 of your debt, you're not really damaged by that. You benefit from that.
Right.
And you're like, well, because I've talked about this issue with some friends of mine, and they say, well, my kid's going to get their student loans forgiven. Why is there a downside? Like, well, because it's not being forgiven. Right. It's going to the national debt, but that's not enough to sue. So the problem has been with this act from Biden. How do we find someone who can launch the litigation because someone has to be harmed by it? Well, what's interesting is in the entire country of the United States, the most damaged entity is right here in Missouri. It's called MOHELA. It stands for Missouri Higher Education Learning Assistance, I think is what the acronym is. And MOHELA manages the student loans, and they make money on that. And then that money goes to the state of Missouri. So if you're going to forgive a bunch of student loans, now the income to MOHELA goes down, and the state of Missouri loses money because of the forgiveness of student loans. Now you have someone who's been damaged by it. And so the state of Missouri, Eric Schmidt, filed a lawsuit. It got dismissed by the district court judge in St. Louis, Judge Autry. Actually, no Judge Autry. He dismissed it. It went up to the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals. Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals held just yesterday that MOHELA is a damaged party, and therefore they can continue on with this litigation. But here's what's important from a nationwide standpoint. The Court of Appeals, Eighth Circuit, it was unanimous. It's called a per curiam opinion, meaning it was a unanimous decision by the three-court panel stating that because of the fact that MOHELA is one of the largest state-run operators of or managers of student loan programs, that damage is going to affect the entire country because a lot of people come to Missouri to go to school from all across the country. And because of that, there needs to be a nationwide hold on the entire student loan debt transfer program from the Biden administration, and the stay was granted. So if that comes from a district court judge, that's not that strong. But if it comes from a court of appeals decision, a unanimous court of appeals decision, that's a big deal. And it's going to allow the courts to finally address the merits of this student loan program. But from a policy standpoint, what do you think about this student loan so-called forgiveness program? Is it a good idea, a bad idea? What are your thoughts?
From a policy standpoint, I hate it. I hate everything about it. From a politics standpoint, it's a brilliant idea because if you look at the midterm results, Gen Z came out heavily in favor of the Democrats.
Well, but don't they always? I mean, when was there a time that Gen Z didn't come out?
Yeah, but this was like a 2-to-1. It was like a 2-to-1, and they actually, I don't know if they voted more or not. I haven't actually seen the numbers on that, but I'm going to say it basically bought Biden some votes.
I know it did. He bought him votes. He was buying votes, but the difference is he was buying votes with your money.
With my money, yeah.
And he was buying votes with everybody's money.
Yeah.
He wasn't just buying votes with his money. You know, there were issues in the 17 and 1800s in this country where politicians would be giving out whiskey and say, if you vote for my candidate, here's a bottle of whiskey. And that was routinely frowned upon. Okay, people got arrested for passing out whiskey at polling places. But how is this any different? You're saying vote for me and I'll forgive your student loans up to $20,000. I mean, that's a lot more expensive than a bottle of whiskey.
Yeah, I don't think it's any different. I think it's the same thing. Like, really, in all honesty, it's the same thing. But then you've got to look at it because whenever you look at politics, there's always like, we put you in office to do a certain thing. So one of Biden's campaign promises was this student loan forgiveness. But like, are you buying votes? Are people voting for him because he did that? Now that he's done it before, you know, I think it's did he do it before or did he do it after kind of question? Because like, if you vote for a politician because you say the roads need to be fixed, well, I mean, are they buying your vote because they provided the money to fix the roads?
Well, I would say no. And here's the reason why I would say no to that. Because fixing the roads is, number one, a designated government function. Number two, fixing the roads benefits everyone. If you're forgiving student loans, you're only benefiting those select few individuals. Also, fixing the roads allows for a greater economic progress. Transferring the debt from individuals to the government is going to hamper economic progress because it increases and balloons the national debt.
Well, it balloons the national debt. The other thing it does is it frees up money for those individuals that were forgiven the student loans to have more buying power. And when people have more buying power than there is supply, you have a greater demand than you have greater supply, and then you get inflation.
Exactly. And that's what makes me just laugh whenever I heard President Biden touting the benefits of the reason why the Democrats did well in the midterms is he said things like the Inflation Reduction Act. Well, the Inflation Reduction Act was essentially this. It was, there is a dumpster fire, and to put out the fire, we're going to dump gasoline on the dumpster fire to try to put it out. It doesn't put it out. It just makes it worse. And that's what all of these Inflation Reduction Acts have done, is simply make matters worse. But when you get back to the student loan issue, did you ever take out student loans?
I do.
Yeah.
I have debt currently.
Currently, okay. I had debt. I had a lot of debt. I borrowed my way through law school, but I paid that off. And you're trying to pay yours off. Mm-hmm. And number one, it seems like from a policy standpoint, is that if you agreed to pay that back, why should you be relieved of that responsibility just because you don't want to pay it back?
Right. You know, a deal's a deal. If you sign on the dotted line, a deal's a deal. If you sign a bad deal, you're still responsible for the bad deal. At least that was my thought initially. The New York Mets signed a really bad deal with Bobby Bonilla. But Bobby Bonilla signed an amazing deal.
Yes, he did. Yes,
and the thing about it is whenever you go in it now, are people not educating young people going into this? Are lenders taking advantage of them? Yes, but they're still signing on the dotted line.
Exactly.
And that's not the responsibility of those of you who have paid off your student loan debt. That's also not the responsibility of the people that have taken out small business loans to create a small business to run their own thing. They incurred debt to create a business without going to college, and they're getting nothing. And as a matter of fact, they're paying for the people who did.
And right, and of course, in Washington speak today, it's always about how does it impact the poor and minorities. But if the poor and the minorities, in fact, did not go to college, and now their taxes are going to be increased in order to pay for Susie Q to go to college to learn women's studies, gender studies, and basket weaving, and now the poor and the minorities are paying taxes so that not that they can go to college, but that somebody else can go to college to get a worthless degree. That, to me, is the definition of injustice.
Yeah, it's terrible, but I mean, that's not what it's about at the end of the day.
It is not what it's about at the end of the day. Well, this is, of course, was the brainchild of President Biden. Coming up after the break, we're going to talk to Deroy Murdock. You've heard him here. He's here every week. Syndicated columnist, also a Fox News contributor. We're going to talk to him about why the Georgia Senate runoff still matters. Brad Young sitting in today for Annie Frey on the St. Louis home for Conservative Talk, 97.1 FM Talk.
You're listening to The Annie Frey Show. Find the podcast, on-demand audio, and more at 971talk.com/Annie.
Procrastination. We've all been there. But have you been dragging your feet when it comes to creating your retirement plan? I've heard it all from, I have time before I need to make a decision, or I'll eliminate debt first and then get ready for retirement. I've seen far too many people waste valuable time for their retirement planning, and I don't want you to be one of them. Hi, I'm Ken Heisey with Heisey Advisory Group. I'm on a mission to help people recognize the potential destructive impact procrastination can have on their retirement plan. Don't procrastinate. Call us today at 314-328-6000 to ensure you get on the right path toward your retirement dream. 314-328-6000. Again, that's 314-328-6000.
Heisey Advisory Group provides insurance services. Investment advisory services offered through AE Wealth Management, LLC.
Attention! Did you or a loved one live at or near Marine Base Camp Lejeune in North Carolina between 1953 and 1987? If so, listen closely for this important legal announcement. From 1953 to 1987, Marines and their family members at Camp Lejeune drank water that was contaminated with hazardous toxins. The toxins found in the water at Camp Lejeune may cause health issues, especially later in life. Types of health issues associated with water at Camp Lejeune are numerous. If you or a loved one lived near Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1987, you may be entitled to substantial financial compensation without going to court. Even if you were turned down in the past, a new law can allow you to file a claim today. If you or a loved one spent time near Camp Lejeune, call the Negligence Network to find out if you're eligible for financial compensation. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call 1-800-600-5536. That's 1-800-600-5536. 1-800-600-5536.
Hi, my name is Curtis Barks with Complete Auto Body and Repair. In honor of our newest location in Cottleville, for any new customers, simply come into any of our 6 locations and ask us to pay the first $50, and we will. That's right. That means brakes, suspension, alignments, air conditioning, even our auto body work. Please come see our team or visit us at CompleteAB.com. If it's not perfect, it's not complete. Others can't compete with Complete Auto Body.
Dad, and service.
Oh yeah, and service.
He fixes cars.
It's the most wonderful time of the year, and Wonder Lights Christmas in St. Louis is brighter than ever at Worldwide Technology Raceway. The holliest, jolliest light show around is celebrating the season from November 11th until January 1st. Open nightly, rain, shine, or snow, including holidays. Tickets now available at the gate and online at WonderlightsChristmas.com. Brought to you in part by the Illinois Office of Tourism and Illinois South Tourism. WonderlightsChristmas.com.
For details and a list of all station contest rules, visit www.971talk.com/rules.
You can support our local first responders by getting an ATF raffle ticket. Go to 971talk.com/Cox to help responder rescue and maybe win some great alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and food prizes. That's 971talk.com/Cox.
Will you hold the line when every one of them is giving up and giving in? Tell me, in this house of mine, nothing ever comes without a consequence of cost. Tell me, will the stars align? Will heaven step in?
You're listening
Will
to
the
The Annie Frey Show on St. Louis's home for conservative talk.
That's the price you pay.
Follow Annie on Twitter at Annie Frey Show.
Welcome back to the Annie Frey Show. Brad Young sitting in today. And, of course, for the last week or so since the election, apparently we count votes here slower than they count votes in Bolivia. But the question has been if the Georgia election would make the difference between who runs the Senate. It's enormously important. But now we know that's not necessarily the case. But is the Georgia runoff election still important? Joining us today, of course, is Deroy Murdock. You know him. He's a syndicated columnist. He's also a Fox News contributor. You know him. You hear him here every single week. Hey, Deroy, welcome back to 97.1 FM Talk.
Hey, Brad, great to be on with you.
Yeah, last time we had a Georgia runoff election, Raphael Warnock, he prevailed. It was a small margin, but he did prevail. So one of the things we saw in this midterm election is that most incumbents were reelected. Do you foresee Walker bucking that trend here in December?
Well, he might, and I sure hope he does. It's very important for a number of reasons. Number one, even though the Senate is in Democrat control, which, of course, nobody saw coming a week ago, if we can get it to where it is now, where they need to have the essentially the assent of Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema to do their, let's just say, their nefarious deeds, they'll be in that same position if they've got Herschel Walker there to make it basically a 50-50 GOP-Democrat tie, with Kamala Harris having to come in to break tie votes. If it's going to be 51-49, it makes it that much easier for them to have that one extra vote. And if Joe Manchin objects, they'll say, "Well, we don't need your vote. We've got Raphael Warnock, so whoever else it is, and we'll have Fetterman's rather than Pat Toomey to block things." John Fetterman of Pennsylvania will go ahead and vote yes and do whatever Chuck Schumer wants. So having Herschel Walker there basically puts Joe Manchin, Kyrsten Sinema in a position to block what they want to do. That's the first piece. Second, this isn't just a 2-year House seat. This is a 6-year Senate seat. So if Warnock is there, he'll have 6 years to be there, introduce bad bills, vote down good bills, gain in stature, gain in seniority, end up becoming a subcommittee chairman or committee chairman, what have you. I'd much rather have Herschel Walker there for six years, advancing ideas of limited government, free markets, personal individual freedom, and personal responsibility. And other thing I think is very important is having Herschel Walker there as yet another black Republican in Capitol Hill. On Capitol Hill. I mean, we've right now got Tim Scott, black Republican in the Senate. If Herschel Walker joins him, we'll actually have more black Republican senators than there are black Democrat senators.
Fascinating.
That'll be kind of interesting. And boy, let's see how the Democrats say, "Oh, the Republicans are a racist party." I'll say, "Well, I see one black guy Democrat here, and I see 2 black male Republicans. So please explain again how it's a racist."
Yeah, that
party,
rocks
please.
the narrative, doesn't it?
Kind of, it does. And, Herschel Walker's an athlete. He is somebody who I think you could say is pretty authentically black. And I think he can go into black neighborhoods and be able to open doors, open minds, get all sorts of people to pay attention to the Republican and conservative causes that will be just absolutely priceless and just invaluable. And that's one of the reasons the Democrats don't want him there. They understand how valuable he would be to us, and that's the last thing they need. So they're going to try to knock him down between now and December 6th. So I hope people will stand up for him. Go to teamherschel.com, I believe is his website, and see what they can do to help and get a good man into the U.S. Senate for 6 years.
We're of course talking to Deroy Murdock, nationally syndicated columnist and Fox News contributor. And you mentioned Sinema and Joe Manchin a few moments ago, and just things that come to mind. They blocked. Now, by no stretch are either of those senators conservative, but they block things like packing the court. They block things like adding Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico to states to increase the number of Democrats in the Senate. They blocked a multi-trillion-dollar green bill, and it was half that instead. So they have made differences. And so if Raphael Warnock gets elected, it's going to make it harder for folks like Manchin and Sinema to block those kinds of far-left progressive bills, isn't it?
That's correct. It'll make it harder for them to do that. And I think, frankly, after we unfortunately saw Manchin go off and support the Inflation Reduction Act, which came as a surprise to people. But the deal was that he was going to get this permit reform thing passed, which would make it easier to have this pipeline go from West Virginia to Virginia and help carry their natural gas out of there and onto market. And they really shafted him on that. They said, hey, we'll support this if you support the Inflation Reduction Act. He very foolishly didn't do this. He should have said, great, we're going to vote on the permit thing. If that goes through, then I'll support the Inflation Reduction Act. He did it the other way around. And once they got his vote on it, they said, all right, thanks a million, see ya. Yeah. And he didn't get a vote on that. So he really, I'm amazed a guy of his stature and experience let himself be bamboozled that way. So based on that, my guess is he's not probably in much of a mood to do what Chuck Schumer wants. But he needs to have somebody else there to put him in a position where he can stand in the way. If we have Raphael Warnock there rather than Herschel Walker, it reduces the ability and the leverage of somebody like Manchin or Sinema or both to stop Chuck Schumer and the rest of the crazies from doing the awful things they want to do.
And with the Republicans set to control the House, it's just a matter of time before that's going to be official. And with the Democrats controlling the Senate, this is often something that we hear that's called gridlock government. But is that necessarily a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing if it means that a guy like Joe Biden is finally going to have a break applied to what he wants to do. Here's a guy who's come in less than 2 years, and I must say it's really kind of an impressive accomplishment to take an economy that was picking up speed after the tremendous body blow we took from COVID-19, growing at 6.4% with, I believe, what was the number? I'm forgetting now. Inflation
was less than 2%.
1.92.
Exactly.
I forget the exact number. It was 2-ish or so when he arrived, and now we've got inflation at 7.7%. We actually had a recession with 2 negative quarters just now, and with the economy just crawling along, and with all sorts of international problems, the mess in Afghanistan, the Ukraine war. I don't think Putin would have gone in Ukraine if Donald J. Trump were in office. And so all these things have happened with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer cheering him on. If it's now going to be Chuck Schumer cheering him on, and I assume it'll be Kevin McCarthy not cheering him on, maybe a different speaker for all we know, but if the Republicans saying, look, we don't like this, we're not going along with it, it's going to limit the damage that Joe Biden can do. So just from that standpoint, that will be a huge step forward by limiting what Biden can do in terms of taking his monstrous ambitions and turning them into law.
And regardless of who becomes the eventual Speaker of the House, whether it's Kevin McCarthy or others, what do you foresee in terms of the congressional role of investigation? The congressional role of investigation during the Biden administration has really been limited to January 6th. That's the only attempts by Congress to give oversight and to try to control what's going on in Washington. Don't you? Obviously, that's going to change with Republican control of the House of Representatives. What do you see the House of Representatives looking into once Republicans take control?
Excellent question. There's some basic things that are not really all that partisan that they should have looked into. The Democrats are displayed a tremendous lack of curiosity about the origins of the COVID-19 virus and the pandemic that killed, I believe, about 1.5 million Americans and about 6 million around the world. The Nancy Pelosi and Schumer have no interest in finding out, was this from a laboratory? Was it from a meat market, open air market? Was it deliberate? Was it an accident? There's no curiosity. So I think we'll have some hearings and maybe possibly get to the bottom of that. That could be helpful. Of course, they have no interest in looking into the Hunter Biden situation, and to whatever degree the Hunter Biden and or his family are compromised by this array of very questionable deals they've got with Burisma in Ukraine, various Chinese companies, this payment of $1.5 million to Hunter Biden by the wife of the former mayor of Moscow. Did he buy some paintings? Did he buy some carvings? I mean, what on earth did he get for this $1.5 million? I mean, I went to Moscow once. I came back with some postcards and those little wooden dolls, one inside the other.
The nested dolls,
Matryoshka dolls. I didn't come back with anything. $1.5 million, a check for $1.5 million, or maybe cash $1.5 million. I'd love to hear more about that. Talk about Russian collusion. And I think they're going to look into probably take a look at crime. And George Soros and his support of these very corrupt prosecutors who don't prosecute criminals. They basically act like defense attorneys. Maybe we'll get to the bottom of that and figure out who these people are and why they're doing this and what kind of funding they've gotten from George Soros and, whether that's on the up and up or not.
Right. And we have one of those prosecutors right here in the city of St. Louis, Kim Gardner, whose campaign was directly funded by George Soros. And, of course, crime is the number one issue in most Democrat cities, including St. Louis, and yet we have a prosecuting attorney here who's had 150% turnover in her staff of attorneys because they're not prosecuting any crimes. It's outrageous, and I would like to see them get into that as well. We're talking to Deroy Murdock, nationally syndicated columnist and Fox News contributor. How about the border? Do you see a Republican-controlled House looking into the issues at the border and trying to offer solutions for the border crisis?
I think they will do that. I think what they also might do is impeach DHS Secretary Mayorkas, who repeatedly has gone up to Capitol Hill and said the border is closed, the border is secure. That is perjury. There's no way you can say that and not be doing anything other than lying, lying. Now you could say, we're working on it. We're trying to get a grip on it. It's more open than we want. No, he gets up and says it's closed, it's secure, and that's just a lie. There's no other. That's the most polite word I can use. And for that, he ought to be impeached. I mean, I don't know if the Senate will go along and try him and convict him, but he at least ought to be impeached and have that mark on his record, and maybe that'll get him to act, do his job a little better or something. But they certainly can tie things to they have the power of the purse and say, look, there's going to be no spending on anything the Biden administration wants until we shut that border down and stop the illegal aliens and the criminals and the fentanyl that's killed 71,000 Americans last year alone, and 113, I think is the number, people on the terrorist watch list who have been caught down there on Biden's watch, including 20 in September. These are people who are on the watch list saying this guy might be ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Hezbollah, what have you, and these are the ones we've caught. Who knows how many we've not caught, who are here doing who knows what. And the White House seems to have no interest, no concern, no worry about any of this stuff, and God forbid these people, get some explosives and do something really ugly.
Last question. Of course, we're talking to Deroy Murdock. Last question. Republicans, they did very well, ironically, in midterms in New York and California, two states where no one believed Republicans could do well, but the candidates there ran on traditional conservative themes, strong national defense, protect the border, anti-crime, those types of traditional themes. Does that tell us anything about how to structure campaigns going into 2024?
Well, it might. Unfortunately, here in New York, Lee Zeldin ran a fantastic, energetic, focused, very disciplined campaign for governor. He didn't win, unfortunately, which shocked a lot of us because we're living with crime and just chaos here. But the good news is he generated enough excitement that people like George Santos in part of Queens and Long Island, and he won, beating a Democrat sort of television personality / lawyer named Robert Zimmerman, who defeated him by about 8 points pretty comfortably. And then Michael Lawler upstate beat Sean Patrick Maloney, who's the head of the Democrat Congressional Campaign Committee. He was basically the chief general for keeping the House Democrats in power, and he got defeated. That has not happened, I think, 40 years, if I'm not mistaken. Quite an accomplishment. So I think that having Lee Zeldin's message on crime as strong as it was helped get them over the finish line, I believe. And look, I always think that if you're running for office, it's important to point out the drawbacks of your opponent, but you ought to be running on a positive message and how you're going to make people's lives stronger and safer and more prosperous and more free. And if you run on those things, there's a very good chance Republicans actually will win elections.
Excellent. Deroy Murdock, nationally syndicated columnist, Fox News contributor, joins us here every week here on 97.1. Thanks again for your time this afternoon. We appreciate it.
You bet, Brad. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure. Hey, when we come back from this break, we're going to talk about some free speech issues. Free speech. I mean, that should be, that's a given for America. But yet the Biden administration goes out of its way, and also some of the globalists in other countries are going out of their way to squelch free speech. What are they afraid of? I thought words could never hurt me. Only sticks and stones, and yet they're afraid of free speech. We're going to dive into that next here on the St. Louis home for conservative talk, 97.1 FM Talk.
Through the glass, found the wrong within the past, knowing we are.
The Annie Frey Show is streaming online. Watch us live on YouTube and subscribe.
The truth, that's the price you pay.
Hi, this is Brian with Velocity Home Buyers, and I buy houses cash. If you own a house and want to sell it fast at a fair price, call me at 314-782-3333. I can pay cash and close in as little as 7 days. I buy houses in any condition and any price range in the St. Louis area. I'm a private real estate investor who buys several houses a month, and I want to buy more. I buy inherited houses, divorce houses, behind in payment houses. I even buy my tenant won't pay me the rent houses. Do you own a house that needs updating, but you don't have the time or money for it? Great, because I love buying outdated houses. I buy vacant houses, job relocation houses, and foreclosure houses. If you own a house and want to sell it fast, call me at 314-782-3333. That's 314-782-3333.
I'm back to doing what I love and more, thanks to the Good Feet store.
The pain was so bad, it felt like I was walking on knife blades. It took my life away. And my doctor recommended that I go to Good Feet. I took about 4 steps and started to cry. It was the first time that I had no pain. I'm not an actor. I want people to know, whether you're young or old, these are life-changing. I've tried the rest. The best is Good Feet. I'm ready to rock and roll, man. Let's go to the ballpark. We're going to Monster Jams. We're going camping. My attitude's changed. I'm a happier man. I'm like a regular dad now. The kids have seen that change and that confidence in dad, and they like the new dad.
Call 314-317-9494 or visit one of our 2 locations on Olive, Catty Corner from TGI Fridays, or in Shiloh, Illinois, across from Deerbergs.
Thanks to the Good Feet store.
Individual results may vary. Consult your physician for medical conditions. Visit the website goodfeetstlewis.com. Come in and try the Good Feet feeling today. Comfort, energy, performance, and pain relief at the Good Feet store.
You know, the heat doesn't matter. The rain doesn't matter. When it gets cold in a few months, the snow and sleet won't matter to the outside of my house because I have Rhino Shield. You've heard me say that before, but I'm just telling you, 15 years now, 15 years ago, before I was on this radio station, that's a long time ago, I signed up for Rhino Shield. Darren came over. He showed me this great product. I'm like, why would I worry about painting every couple of years when I could do this? And I did it, and I'm just as happy today as I was the day that I made that decision all those years ago. And I've still got 10 years left on a 25-year warranty. Think about that. How many products can you buy where you get that kind of guarantee? Call Darren and let him come over and give you a free estimate. If you're thinking about painting, stop. Put Rhino Shield on instead. 877-25-RHINO is the phone number. Still plenty of time to get scheduled for this summer, or go online to find out more at 877-25rhino.com. Mark Cox here. If you're nearing retirement or already retired, call Thomas Helbig with the Retirement Advisory Group at 314-993-9494. He'll show you how to participate in the market gains without ever losing a penny. Thomas is the official financial advisor of the Mark Cox Morning Show.
Don't miss the Big Night In, a movie and media event on November 17th from 5 to 8 p.m. at the Sound Room in Chesterfield. Be among the first to see the hottest home entertainment items for the holiday season and the year ahead. Hear from experts with the industry's premier manufacturers: Sony, Kaleidoscape, Epson, Paradigm, Anthem, Stewart Film Screen, Samsung, EPV Screens, and JL Audio. They'll lead demos and learning sessions. I'll even be there discussing the trends in media and how I experience all of this at home. Limited space is available. Reserve your spot today at thesoundroom.com. That's thesoundroom.com.
You're listening to the Annie Frey Show live from the Air Comfort Service Heating, Cooling, and Insulation Studio. Air Comfort Service is proud to support Greater St. Louis Honor Flight. Sign your veteran up for the Honor Flight today at gslhonorflight.org. And for heating services, visit aircomfortservice.com.
Filtering the BS pushed by the mainstream media.
St. Louis's home for conservative talk.
97.1 FM Talk. This is the Annie Frey Show. Interact with Annie on Facebook. The Annie Frey Show.
It shouldn't have to be a radio station that says that free speech is good. But ironically, that's about the only place you're going to hear that today. And it baffles my mind that people are so enraged about the marketplace of ideas. I mean, look at right now, the entire Elon Musk issue, how it's daily. He's on the front page of the paper. He's always leading the news cycle on television, that the left are simply flabbergasted with the idea that people should be allowed to express their ideas. My goodness, that should not be allowed, says the left. And it's to me, it's a self-defeating argument to say we need to squelch speech in this country, because as soon as you do that, it might be your speech that eventually is squelched. And yet they can't understand that. And I think the greatest hotbed of controversy when it comes to free speech is in the exact place where free speech used to be cherished, and that's on college campuses. When I give you a quick story. When I was in college, it was a while ago. It was at SIU Carbondale, and I was in a class. This was before law school, and I was in a class where I was arguing a conservative point in a political science class, and the professor said, "Brad, you understand that the other 28 people in this class are against you on this point." And I said, "Well, I understand, but if all those 28 people go out and bring in 3 friends, maybe we'll have a fair argument." And she laughed and the kids laughed. And I thought, I'm going to flunk this class because I was an outspoken conservative in this class. I ended up getting not only 100, but I got extra credit points for participation. And I was impressed by that. But that wouldn't happen today. If you voiced conservative opinions on college campuses today, you will be ostracized, you will be canceled, and you will be pummeled with public opinion against you. And yet, college campus is supposed to be the incubator for free speech in this country, and it simply doesn't happen. Case in point, Exhibit A. Just this week, we saw just another incident of protesters shutting down an event because, my goodness, my ears are so precious that they cannot hear any opinions that I disagree with. And it was an interesting event because it was Ann Coulter. She was speaking at Cornell University. And as the protesters started yelling things like, "Your words are violence," think about that for just a moment. I'm going to play a clip in just a moment too, but think about the accusation, "Your words are violence." And I'm pausing to let that sink in because that should scare every one of us. But it's just the latest example of how the progressive left treats free speech as violence, as harm. It's painful. It needs to be regulated, just like guns need to be regulated for the progressive left. And what's interesting, though, is that Cornell actually stood up for Ann Coulter. That was what was shocking to me, and they're going to reschedule this event. But here's just a bit of what you heard at the Ann Coulter speech late last week or earlier this week.
What's violent is fashion. I've been dying to say for this entire campaign, but I really
no KKK, no fascist USA. 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 No KKK, no fascist USA.
Boy, they need to get a new jingle. That one's not very good. They need to come up with a better jingle. But I want to come back to this idea that words are violence, because it's so important to understand that mindset of the progressive left today. and I'm going to give you an example again from law school. Well, when I was in law school, that was the time there was a case in Texas that came out. And the case was someone burning the American flag. And Mr. Brad Range, you can agree with me that burning the American flag is awful and it's reprehensible, isn't it?
I agree with that, yeah.
It is awful. And going into that law school class, going into that First Amendment class, I was of the firm belief that burning the American flag should be banned. It should be against the law and it should be prohibited because I felt so strongly about it. My father fought in Korea. My father-in-law fought in Korea. People whom I knew fought and died for that flag. And I thought, if there's anything that should be prohibited from burning, it should be the American flag. And yet, I got to tell you, my opinion switched on that because burning the flag is quintessential speech. And if you embrace this idea that speech should be free, if you look at the First Amendment and really buy into that idea, then burning the American flag is the act of speech. And as much as I find it to be reprehensible, to be wrong, to be morally corrupt, to be morally bankrupt, as strongly as I feel against burning the American flag, I also understand that that's free speech. And what's interesting is that speech that's popular doesn't need to be protected. I mean, if you go out today and you want to get on a mainstream media and talk about how we need to be having universal basic income, we need to be paying for everyone to have housing, the government needs to be funding these programs, you're going to have an opportunity to make those statements because from the progressive media, that's a popular idea. So those ideas don't need to be protected. But quintessentially, it's only unpopular ideas that need to be protected, not popular ones. Perfect example. Back in the 1970s, there was a case where in Skokie, Illinois, which is a community that is heavily Jewish, there was a protest and the KKK wanted to speak there. They weren't threatening violence. They were just expressing anti-Semitic views. And in the 1970s, the ACLU represented them and took it to court and represented the KKK. And the attorneys for the ACLU said, we find our clients' views to be reprehensible, to be morally corrupt and bankrupt and wrong, and we couldn't disagree with them more. But there's nothing more important than the protection of freedom of speech. So the ACLU represented the Ku Klux Klan to allow them to speak their trash, and that's what it was. It was trash. But it's protected trash. Now, I don't think the ACLU would do that today. They would not take that position. What do you think, Brad Range?
Not a chance.
No, not a chance.
Not a chance.
And in fact, the ACLU came out with guidelines a couple of years ago stating that their protection of some rights now have to be filtered through the protection of other rights, which was code for saying we're not going to protect people who say things that we disagree with, which is the exact opposite of protecting free speech. It's protecting selected speech. It's not protecting free speech. So I give that as an example to say, if you're Ann Coulter and you're going to say things that are objectionable on campus, on a college campus, let her speak. What's the harm? But there's this view on the left that words are violence. And if violence needs to be stopped and words are violence, then we need to stop your words. And that's something that we need to grasp, that the left doesn't view your political opinion as speech. The left views your political opinion as violence. And hence, it must be regulated. It must be stopped. And we're seeing this, and you might be thinking right now, well, that's maybe true on these the hippies that go to college and the progressives that are at college, but that's not true in the real world. But let me give you a perfect example of this. Right now, Eric Schmidt filed a lawsuit, which I applauded when he did it, suing the federal government for colluding with tech companies to squelch your free speech. And this was an attempt by the government to get around the First Amendment. We all know that private companies are not bound by the First Amendment. And so the idea is that if the federal government tells tech companies what speech to censor, then it's being done by a private company. It's not being done by the government. So therefore, First Amendment doesn't apply. Eric Schmidt is proving that it does apply, because if the federal government is colluding to rob you of your right to free speech, then the tech companies are acting under what's called color of law. Just like if the FBI pays an informant to go in and spy on the mafia, now they're acting as an agent of the government. Same is true in this situation. The tech companies are operating as an arm of the federal government. So now that Elon Musk has taken over Twitter and said, we're going to allow free speech, guess what? The Biden administration announced last week, and the National Security Advisor confirmed over the weekend, that the Biden administration is considering investigating Musk's acquisition of Twitter on national security grounds. Did you see this story?
I did.
Yeah. I mean, doesn't it bother you that the federal government, the White House, the President of the United States, is going to investigate Musk for national security concerns, all because they're worried about free speech?
He's not worried about free speech. They're worried about free speech happening. They're not trying to protect it. And the interesting thing to me is you go back, you listen to the students that are trying to shout down or shouting down Ann Coulter, that are shutting down these events. It's not to protect their own ears. It's not. That's, I don't want people to get confused when they hear this. Whenever there are people out there trying to shut down free speech, what they're trying to stop from happening is they're trying to stop you from hearing it. Because if they were only concerned with, let's say, not hearing this, guess what they don't do? They don't go to the event. Right. Then their ears are protected. They don't have to hear what Ann Coulter says.
And that's freedom. I mean, the freedom is I can go or not go. That's my choice.
Right. Same thing on Twitter. If I don't want to hear you, mute.
Yep.
Block. I don't have to listen to you.
Exactly.
You can still say whatever you want. But that's not what their goal is. Their goal is to get you off the platform so other people can't hear you.
Yep. And you see this on a global stage. It's not just happening in the United States. I read this week that Ireland is considering enacting a bill that would criminalize the possession of what they call hate speech. Now, what Ireland might classify as hate speech is if you have a Bible that says homosexuality is a sin, that could be classified as hate speech, and you could go to jail for possession of a commentary on the Bible. I mean, that's really what it is. That's happening in Ireland, which is a country that's been rooted in faith and religion for centuries. And yet now free speech is a target of that country. And I think that's just foretells of things to come right here in the United States. A lot of things that happen in Europe, they make their way to the United States. If people in this country think that words are violence, then that's something that should be stopped, that should be squelched. And even if you possess material, you should go to jail. Hey, Brad Young sitting in for Annie Frey. Make sure you stick around after this break.
Did you know the Missouri State Treasurer's Office holds over $1 billion of unclaimed property? That's billion with a B. Things like utility deposits or uncashed checks and other money you didn't know was missing. This is Missouri State Treasurer Scott Fitzpatrick. My office wants to return this money to rightful owners, and the average claim is $300. Search your name online 24/7 at showmemoney.com. Claiming your money is always free, so search today at showmemoney.com.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along, which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ziprecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter.com/radio.
Oh, Hank, what a wonderful spider web you have built for us. I love this fabulous space we have right here in the corner of the kitchen.
Thanks, Charlotte. I think I'll build us a vacation web in the coat closet. Maybe even one in Susie's room, too. Oh no, it's the pest control company again with those green wheels. They always kill the move.
This is Derek, the owner of All Solutions Pest Control. Give us a call today at 636-486-7888.
If a pest-free home is your goal, call All Solutions Pest Control.
KFTK FM Florissant.
Driven by the Bommarito Automotive Group.
97.1 FM Talk.
Always live on the free Odyssey app.
Team ahead. I'm Lisa Brady, Fox News. The former president expected to jump into the 2024 race tonight, despite some fellow Republicans urging him to wait.
A lot of members of former President Trump's own party are questioning the timing of this big announcement just a week after the midterm elections. But there's one big advantage to declaring his candidacy so early, and that's that it could potentially clear the field of opponents before they have a chance to even say that they're running.
Fox Business's Grady Trimble in Palm Beach. This as midterm votes are still being counted. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says Trump is only out for himself, even if it hurts the Republican Party.
Republicans should learn that lesson or risk even more failure in the future.
The Democrats have already clinched keeping control of the Senate. Republicans are still expected to take control of the House, and they're now holding internal leadership elections with Arizona Congressman Andy Biggs challenging House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy to be the new House Speaker. Results would still need approval in the new Congress. We are just getting reports of Russian missiles crossing into NATO member Poland, killing 2 people. However, this has not been independently confirmed, but it follows the latest Russian barrage into Ukraine.
The mayor of Kyiv, Vitaly Klitschko, said 2 residential buildings were hit in the strikes. Officials in the western city of Lviv also reported explosions, and the Interfax Ukraine news agency said blasts were heard in Kharkiv.
Fox's Jonathan Savage. AP is reporting that a senior U.S. intelligence official says top leaders are holding an emergency meeting due to a crisis situation. However, again, not confirming that report of the Russian missiles crossing into NATO member Poland. America is listening to Fox News.
Come on, we're going to be late to the cookout.
I was just packing up my famous mac and cheese.
I hope you packed the Pepto, too.
Huh?
Pepto-Bismol provides fast relief from heartburn and indigestion. You know, that uncomfortable feeling after you eat too much. And after the deviled eggs, baked beans, and barbecue ribs, you're going to need it.
Barbecue ribs? I should probably pack an extra shirt, too.
Good call.
When you have nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea.
Pepto-Bismol. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Finding the right Medicare plan? Oof, no easy feat. Kind of like those dances my granddaughter loves making me do. But then I found Walgreens Find Rx coverage. Lets you compare plans online, over the phone, or in person. Made Medicare shopping so easy. Plus, I found plans with low-cost copays. I can get down with that. Medicare annual enrollment ends December 7th. Find a plan that's right for you at walgreens.com/Medicare.
Air Comfort Service Heating and Cooling. Weather.
The official 97.1 FM Talk Weather Center forecast for the afternoon. Some clouds and sun, a breezy afternoon. High today 47. Clear and cold tonight, low 29. Partly sunny for tomorrow, the high only 38. And then clear and cold tomorrow night, low 25. Partly sunny Sunday, the high 42. And then for Monday, partly sunny and chilly with the daytime high 47. I'm Steve Williams for 97.1 FM Talk.
Tonight at 8 o'clock, former President Donald Trump is making a big announcement. What will it be? Well, we'll all find out together. We don't know. We're carrying it live tonight at 8 o'clock. Former President Donald Trump's big announcement right here on 97.1 FM Talk.
When it comes to making plans, you are the best. What about those round trips that you plan in advance, which are perfect on your way there and perfect on your way back? Or those meetings with friends for which you make a group chat 3 months before so that nobody or anything is missing. Or your daughter's first birthday party. You planned it with such dedication that instead of the first, it felt like our 15s. The same way you plan each detail for those moments. Start planning to protect you and your loved ones from a natural disaster. Sign up for local weather and emergency alerts. Prepare an emergency kit. And make a family communications plan. Protecting your family is the best plan you can make. Get started at ready.gov/plan.
Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
Tony La Russa here. Has your loss of energy and weight gain thrown you a curveball in your relationship? If so, go see my friends over at Victory Men's Health. Discreet first-class professionals will help you hit those curves out of the park. VictoryMen'sHealth.com. That's VictoryMen'sHealth.com.
It's here. Diamonds Direct's amazing pre-holiday store-wide sale. This weekend, 3 days of extra savings store-wide. That's an extra 20% off all earrings, all bracelets, all bands, all pendants, all fashion jewelry. Virtually everything in every case is on sale. The lowest prices of the year. And your last chance for store-wide savings before Christmas. You can't miss this. Engagement rings on sale. Eternity bands on sale. Exclusive designer jewelry on sale. Details at DiamondsDirect.com. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday only. And only at Diamonds Direct. Your love, our passion.
Join us at Odyssey as we all do our one thing, together millions of things for our planet. If having turkey for the holidays, buy from a local farm, get one labeled USDA organic or certified humane. When we each share our one thing, it becomes a million things for our planet. What's your one thing?
That is exactly what I needed to hear.
Thank God someone here knows what they're talking about.
That's us. That's right. Gotta love this American ride.
All right, you need to take the time and get the full picture.
Come on, turn the radio on. It's Saturday and I won't be long.
Don't get me wrong, I love the ladies. I mean, they rev my engine, but they don't belong in the newsroom. It is anchor man, not anchor lady.
What do you want from me? I'm not America's sweetheart.
Goodness sake, kid. Keep your voice down. Your father's listening to the radio.
I'm not America's sweetheart.
This is the Annie Frey Show.
Welcome back to the Annie Frey Show. Brad Young sitting in today for Annie. And of course, President Biden has been meeting world leaders at the G20 summit this week. And joining us to discuss the impact of these meetings is Jim Carafano. You know him, you love him, you can't live without him. Vice President for Foreign and Security Policy at the Heritage Foundation. Hey, Jim, great to talk to you again.
Yeah, could you repeat that to my wife, please?
You know him, you love him, you can't live without him. I appreciate you working us in. I know you're a busy guy, but President Biden met with Chinese President Xi Jinping this week, and following this meeting, here's what he had to say. Brad, range clip 1.
Do you believe a new Cold War with China can be avoided? And specifically on the issue of Taiwan, you spoke about intentions. Do you believe China is intending to invade Taiwan at some point? And what warnings did you issue to President Xi if he were to take such action?
Well, to answer the first part of your question, I absolutely believe there's need not be a new Cold War. I've met many times with Xi Jinping, and we were candid and clear with one another across the board. And I do not think there's any imminent attempt on the part of China to invade Taiwan. And I made it clear that our policy on Taiwan has not changed at all. It's the same exact position we've had. I made it clear that we want to see cross-strait issues peacefully resolved, and so it never has to come to that.
Jim Carafano, here's what I want to ask you. President Biden said that we need not be in a Cold War with China. Aren't we in a Cold War with China right now?
Yeah, well, he also thinks the border of secure inflation is temporary and Afghanistan was a military victory. So, look, I mean, he completely ignored everything that came out of the Chinese Party Congress.
Yes.
In addition to China's behavior in the last couple of years, including unleashing COVID on the world, China is definitely at war with the United States. They want a world without America. This is his own strategy. Identifies China as an existential threat to the United States and the most significant problem we face in the world today. So the president essentially just countered his own national security strategy. So it's completely nonsensical. I mean, the problem is even the strategy says China is a huge problem, and then the strategy says, but we don't know what to do about it. And it's like saying, we really think that Freddy Krueger is real. He's not just a character in a movie. He's a real thing, and then taking a sleeping pill. This administration has no idea what to do. John Kerry keeps whispering in his ear, we need them to help with climate change.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is yes, of course the Chinese are trying to take America down a notch, and they want to roll without America. There's no question about that. And every day that we don't acknowledge that and fight back, we are putting ourselves at risk. And what he should have been doing, what would have got China's attention and forced them back on their heels, is he should have been talking about the incredible human rights tragedy, the unbelievably excessive and abhorrent use of slave labor in selling products to America.
Yeah,
and intellectual property.
And tell us about there was a reporter that actually asked a question at this press conference. What happened to that reporter? Did you hear about that? Yeah. Well, there was a reporter that asked the question about President Biden, are you going to raise human rights issues with Xi Jinping? And that reporter was forcibly removed from the hall where the meeting was taking place. Yeah.
So the president has ignored supporting, greenlighting the Russian war against Ukraine. There's any number of unbelievably things that are way over the top, and the president just chooses to ignore those. And the message it sends to China is you're weak and afraid.
Yes.
And it's not just China. It's also Russia. Russia, this was the G20 meeting, so Russia is a member of the G20. They should have been expelled. The United States should have protested them being there. The United States should have boycotted the meeting because the Russians were in attendance. Instead, Biden went anyway. And what did the Russians do? Right in the middle of the meeting, they unleashed a hailstorm of missiles at civilian targets in Ukraine. If there had been, there could not be a bigger middle finger to the United States in the middle of the G20. And Biden's response to that was, I'm going to skip the dinner tonight. I'm a little tired. We're going to go back to the room, have some milk and cookies, So does Biden look weak and feckless and out of touch? And is it a massive propaganda victory for the Russians and the Chinese at the G20? And the answer is, you bet absolutely.
Yeah, and from China's perspective, Jim, they're all about image. I mean, we saw from the Chinese Communist Party Congress, they were just outright stating we're at war with the United States. And I'm wondering why we can't acknowledge what China has already announced.
Because John Kerry is whispering the president's ear, we need China to cooperate with us. We can't antagonize the Chinese. China is the world's largest polluter, not even by a small margin, in so many different categories, from plastics in the ocean to greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. And we don't call them out on any of that. They basically make products with slave labor, and a behavior that shouldn't be tolerated by any country. They're giving the precursors to the cartels to make opioids, which are essentially we have an opioid genocide in the United States, and the president doesn't call them on any of that. See, look, you cannot tell me that in every adversarial capital in the world, from Caracas to Havana to Tehran to Moscow to Beijing, people are not sitting around their desks saying, how can we take advantage of this guy in the White House while we have the chance, while he's there?
We're talking to Jim Carafano, Vice President of Foreign and Security Policy at the Heritage Foundation. And Jim, North Korea literally launched itself into the news this month with more missiles threatening both South Korea and Japan. And the question, we're talking about China here. Do you think China actually has any actual leverage over North Korea? And what would it take to force China to use that leverage?
So this is a bit complicated. Yes, they have leverage over the North Koreans, but the reverse is true, which is the North Koreans have a lot of leverage over the Chinese, which is, hey, dude, we just collapse, and then you have to deal with it.
Exactly.
And the Chinese don't want that. The other thing the Chinese don't want is they don't want the problem to be solved, because if the problem is solved and North Korea and South Korea make peace, then that's bad for the Chinese. So the Chinese have leverage, but they're also incredibly happy just the way things are.
Mm-hmm.
And so what makes you think that there's some kind of leverage? We won't even speak mean to the Chinese. And people talk about, well, we can leverage the Chinese and they can make the North Koreans behave. We won't even call them out on their own abuses. So I I just think all that's just a bunch of happy talk, that somehow the Chinese are going to solve North Korea for us. I will say this, look, at least North Korea, all they do is shoot missiles and kill a bunch of fish. The Russians shoot missiles and they're trying to destroy an entire country. So let's have a little perspective here.
Well, I want to touch on this for a moment. You may not have heard this yet, Jim. It was just announced at the top of the hour, and the story is literally breaking. So if you don't feel comfortable talking about it, I understand. But it was just reported that Russian missiles actually flew into Poland and struck targets in Poland. And I also heard that.
I know everything.
Okay, well, yes, you do. And I'll make sure and tell your wife that, too.
That's true.
That's very true. But NATO leaders are starting an emergency meeting. But here's what I'd like to ask you. What are the ramifications of Russian missiles landing inside of Poland, and how does Article 5 of NATO play into this?
Right. Well, I would suspect, and it's more likely than not, that it was inadvertent, particularly since they didn't hit a military target or anything of significant. I mean, they killed 2 people, which is significant, but it was on the border. It was in a low community that has, kind of nothing to do with nothing. So, and it's not unusual for missiles to go astray. So it's very likely that it was inadvertent. The odds that, the Poles will protest, they might do some, but they're not going to go to war over this. And NATO is certainly not going to invoke Article 5 over this. Yeah, it's just not going to happen. I mean, for example, look, we had an airline that the Russians shot down over Ukraine, a commercial airline.
Yeah, KAL Flight 007.
Right, killed a number of NATO citizens. Did we declare war on Russia? No, because they probably didn't mean to do that.
Right, understood. But I wanted your take on it because you obviously have your finger on the pulse of these things, and I want to get your opinion on it. I want to go back to China for just a moment. We're, of course, talking to Jim Carafano, Vice President for Foreign and Security Policy at the Heritage Foundation, and China's economy has been consistently underperforming, kind of like in a direct proportion with Xi Jinping's increased totalitarian control. In other words, as he gets more control, the Chinese economy tends to go lower. And as Xi continues to increase his power in China, do you foresee China to continue to underperform economically?
Yep, I do. And not only is it going to continue to underperform, but increasingly invoking a state-directed economy, essentially kind of rebalance wealth and redistribute wealth in the country, is only going to make it more inefficient. So, yeah, which is exactly why if the United States is going to protect our intellectual property, ban slave labor practices, and do other things, now is exactly the time to do that when the Chinese economy is the most vulnerable. Because in the end of the day, what really makes China a threat is their economy.
Yes.
And if you and this is why a lot of people hear this thing about decoupling. Oh, let's just not do business with the Chinese. That's not a strategy. That's like if we unplug the iron, the iron will cool down. We need to diminish the Chinese economy as a threat to the United States. That's much more sophisticated than just unplugging the iron.
Yeah, and that's a big question because obviously it involves both economic issues, foreign policy issues, issues with our trading partners, issues with countries whom we would like to become trading partners with, like what we see in the Philippines that's torn between helping China and running from China. And so all of these issues kind of come together, yet I don't see the Biden White House as being capable of pulling all that together in terms of a coherent strategy.
And you're absolutely right. They're completely incapable of that. We're actually writing that right now. We put together a list of about 30 different actions. It's a mixture of offense and defense. That we do all these things, and essentially we take China off the table as a threat. And we can do this because at the end of the day, the one thing that Russia and China and the United States we all want to win without fighting. And I mean, it doesn't mean obviously there's going to be fighting. The Chinese have border discussions with the Indians, the Russians are invading Ukraine, but we don't want to fight war with each other because we all fear the military consequences of that. So this, the president says, I don't want a Cold War. Well, that's kind of essentially the definition of, I don't like Cold War because it's not Russia and it's a different kind of war. So I don't like calling it Cold War, but essentially it's a competition through everything short of military warfare. And that's exactly what's going on here. And we need to win that, and we need to be in it to win it. And the Biden administration is absolutely not. They're absolutely not.
And not even capable.
Well, and I go back, I know we just had an election, all on domestic issues. I get that. We had national elections 2 years ago, all on domestic issues. I get that, all on, tweeting and COVID and everything else. But the reality is when you send a president to Washington, it doesn't matter what you think you're voting for a commander-in-chief. When you send senators and congressmen to Washington, you're voting for the people that raise and maintain military, that sign treaties, or prove treaties, that presidents who are, and the reality is you elect a foreign policy team whether you think it or not, and we do not have a team in Washington, D.C. that believes in peace through strength, that knows how to secure America's place in the world, and knows how to deal with the consequential existential enemies that we have. And until we have that, we are sorely going to be not sleeping well in our beds at night.
Jim Carafano, I want to ask you one other question because I know your time is valuable. What we saw in Ukraine, I think one of the big takeaways from Ukraine is that the Russian military was grossly overstated. In other words, we thought the Russian military would perform exponentially better than they actually did. Do we see the same type of analysis possibly as applying to China? Because China's military structurally and systemically is structured very similarly to the Russian military. And so when we're concerned about China, I'm not trying to say they're not an issue, but might we be overestimating the Chinese military ability, just like we overestimated the Russian military ability?
Well, we don't know because even the Chinese don't know how well the military can fight because they haven't fought. But I would make the point that even though the Russian military performed less well than it did, it still captured an enormous amount of Ukrainian territory. It put several million refugees on the road. It destroys 50% of the Ukrainian economy. It kidnapped 300,000 Ukrainian children. It's had tens of thousands of military casualties. It's massacred civilians. So even bad militaries can do a lot of destruction. So you want to be prepared for that. And I think that's the message that you take away.
I just want to ask you, because a minute ago you touched on these items that you were developing as policy points to how to contain China. Is that something that's going to be published by the Heritage Foundation?
It will, and the military is part of that because you want to actually force it's called you want to impose costs. You want China to be forced to make hard choices. They want to develop their military. Well, we have to develop our military to challenge that, and then meanwhile stress their economy. And so they're thrust in a very difficult situation of, well, what do? Do I support my military? Do I support my economy? Do I try to do both? What would happen? So we have to re-engage with peace through strength. It's a critical element, and we can afford to do that. And when people say, oh, we can't afford to do this and everything else, my response to that is, we're spending trillions of dollars on nonsense. We have policies which are hamstringing the American economy. We're not going to be safer by abandoning the capacity to defend ourselves. We're going to be safer by defending ourselves and stop doing all the stupid things which are wasting our money and our taxpayer funding. I like to say, we could debate. I'll give you an example. We could debate a lot of things about Ukraine, like it, don't like it, anything else. We probably, in military aid, probably about $18 billion. That $18 billion is basically assured that Vladimir Putin, in his lifetime, will never be able to invade another country. I actually think it's money pretty well spent.
That money is well spent. Jim Carafano, President or Vice President of the Foreign Policy and Security Policy at the Heritage Foundation. Hey, thanks for joining us again, as you do so often here on 97.1 FM Talk.
Thanks for having me.
Great to talk to you, Jim. Love talking to Jim Carafano. Hey, we've got more here on the Annie Frey Show coming up. You want to stick around through the break. More to come on the St. Louis home for conservative talk, 97.1 FM Talk.
You're listening to The Annie Frey Show on St. Louis's home for conservative talk. Follow Annie on Twitter at Annie Frey Show.
You had a solid retirement dream, sell your home in a few years, bank the equity, downsize and travel, but inflation and recession has you wondering if all your hard-earned equity will still be there. What if you could recession-proof your equity right now? You can with Truehold. Truehold will buy your home for its best current value before a recession can erode it. You get to bank all the cash now and live in your home for as long as you want, and Truehold covers all property taxes, insurance, repairs, and maintenance. And since Truehold pays your home's current value in cash now, it's yours to do whatever you like. Don't wait for inflation, recession, and interest rates to erode your home's value. Visit Truehold.com and discover how much Truehold will buy your home for today based on its best current value, not what's coming. Call 1-855-300-9993 or visit Truehold.com. The smarter, faster way to cash out on your home's value without having to move. That's Truehold.com.
AMCO presents Bet You Didn't Know.
Bet you didn't know that your car's transmission is made up of 800 pieces. Also, bet you didn't know that AMCO's fixed over 40 million transmissions and that AMCO offers a nationwide warranty.
AMCO offers easy payment plan options for most any credit situation, so you can fix it fast and pay it off slow at AMCO.
That's AMCO, AAMCO.
November is upon us, and it's time to give thanks. And one thing I'm thankful for is a clean home, and the pros at Zero Res really go a long way in making that happen. Their cleaning process is platinum rated by the Carpet and Rug Institute for superior extraction and fast dry time. The patented ZR process, which includes ZR Clean, does not contain any harsh soaps, shampoos, or detergents, so it's safe for pets and kids. But before you turn your furnace on for this winter, make sure you do something about the air ducts. The air ducts, the lungs of your home, if they're dirty, your indoor air quality suffers. So they got a great offer for you right now. Call Zero Res or go online to ZeroResSTL.com. Say you want the Mark Reardon special. 3 rooms of carpet clean starting at $129 with a free room of fiber protectant and $50 off air ducts. That's a total of $130 in savings. Take advantage of a great November offer. Call 314-474-2020 or ZeroResSTL.com. You spell it backward or forward, it spells the same. Zero Res. And make sure you tell them that Mark Reardon sent you over. 97.1 FM Talk is embracing the spirit of giving to support the Tree of Hope at SSM Health Cardinal Glennon Children's Hospital. And we need your help. Funds raised help the hospital offer programs not covered by insurance, but so necessary to a child's recovery. Most importantly, all children at Cardinal Glennon receive the best care, regardless of their family's ability to pay. Thank you for supporting Cardinal Glennon. Please make your donations to the Tree of Hope today at 971talk.com/Cardinal Glennon or text the word HOPE to 20357.
St. Louis's home for conservative talk.
The Mark Reardon Show.
A court of appeals here in St. Louis has issued a nationwide stay on the Biden student loan forgiveness program. We'll talk about it Tuesday afternoon.
Weekdays from 3 to 6 on 97.1 FM Talk. The Annie Frey Show is streaming online. Watch us live on YouTube and subscribe.
Brad Young sitting in for Annie Frey today. Annie will be back tomorrow, so don't worry. And of course, we've got Brad Range running. I like to give the example that Brad Range, he's flying the plane. And I'm just the guy that's making the in-flight announcements. That's what I'm doing. But Range is flying the plane, and my friend, I am so glad you are.
Okay.
I mean, I can sit here and say, if you look out your left, you can see the Grand Canyon. I mean, that's my role here. But your role is to make sure that we're airborne and we stay airborne. Yes. And I mean that on air, literally.
Like, literally.
So thank you. It was actually a double entendre metaphor. So I appreciate you flying the plane, my friend. I also have a question for you, because when you do this kind of a thing, you read a lot of news.
Yes.
Which I do anyway, which is why I don't mind coming in and doing this. But we also read a lot of studies. Mm-hmm. And I'm dropping this on you cold because I want to get your reaction to it. But sometimes you read studies, and don't you wonder, what's the purpose, what's the focus, what's the angle, what are they trying to promote? Okay? Now, you're like, okay, what are you going to ask me? Here's my question. A study came out today. One of the things is, if you look at what causes Alzheimer's disease, to boil it all down, there's something called amyloid proteins that form plaques in the brain that causes problems with the synapses in your brain, which results in dementia, Alzheimer's. So I'm looking at those and I'm thinking, okay, I want to read this study, a way to prevent Alzheimer's, right? So I read this study, and the study suggests that one of the things that could prevent Alzheimer's is actually ingredients found in hops, which are used for beer. And as I'm reading this study, and it says that if that the time to start ingesting these elements of hops is in your 20s and 30s, I'm thinking, don't you think some dude was like sitting around going, I need to create a study that shows drinking beer cures Alzheimer's as a way to justify, honey, listen, I know I'm going out with my buddies, but I'm not just going bar hopping. I'm going out to prevent Alzheimer's.
This is preventative medication.
I'm doing this to make sure that I'm with you, honey, and we're old and gray and we both have our brains intact. So I'm going to take a six-pack with me. I mean, doesn't that sound like a study that was designed to justify behavior?
Yes, it actually kind of does. I haven't read the study, but I'm just saying, just reacting on based on what you told me. Yeah, it sounds like that. Oh man, I can't imagine that. It's like I'm taking my Alzheimer's medication. It's like
exactly,
drinking a Natty Light.
And I'm not making this up. The study examined 4 common varieties of hops, and then after these people ingested it, they tested for the antioxidant properties that were in the hops to block amyloid beta proteins from showing up in the brain cells. And so this is a study that was done. But the other thing is not just the point of the study, but isn't this the kind of study that you would want to get government funding to allow you to drink beer? Think about it. I mean, when I was like 24, I would have loved to dream up a study that says, government, give me $5 million to pay me to drink beer.
Yeah. Pay me to drink beer and pay me to write down what other people do when they drink beer.
Exactly. That's like a Friday night for a lot of people. But yet the government's going to pay you to do a study. We talk about geniuses in this world, but the person who figured out how to get a government funding to pay for them to drink beer, that is a true genius.
Yeah. Real men of genius, right?
Real men of genius. Where you oh my goodness. That's something that I truly wish that I would have thought of. So many things I wish I would have thought of. I wish I would have thought of Mystery Science Theater 3000, and I wish I would have dreamed up a way to have the government pay me to drink beer to study the effects on Alzheimer's. Wow. I'm just giving some clues here, folks, as to what you can do. I need to dream up a study that shows the effects of buying sports cars on middle-aged white men and how it can affect their violence, their frame of mind, their openness to global warming, because you got to work global warming in it to get funding, right?
Right.
So if I could somehow tie in, if you buy me a Maserati, how will that impact global warming? Now, I'm going to work on that and see if I can get a government. I don't have all the details worked out, okay? I'm still working on it. But, yeah, I want to do that, or a Ferrari. How a Ferrari, giving a Ferrari to middle-aged, bald men could impact global warming. And I'm going to work on that and tie that together. One thing that has been tied together, and we mentioned this a little bit earlier in the show, one of the things that has been tied together is this idea that the government under the Biden White House has been using tech companies to squelch your free speech, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's on Facebook, on all of these platforms. And so tying things together is exactly what Eric Schmidt has done when he launched this lawsuit to try to demonstrate this collusion between the federal government and tech companies. Now, this is what's interesting, because anytime you're in litigation, I'm in litigation all day. That's what I do. And one of the things that happens is whenever you're suing, one entity is suing another entity, you're trying to block as much of that as you can. You file motions to quash, you file objections to depositions, and that's happening here. But in the lawsuit that Eric Schmidt has filed against the federal government, he requested to depose individuals like Dr. Fauci, to depose individuals like the current White House spokesperson, as well as the prior spokesperson, Jen Psaki. And, of course, the federal government threw up blocks. They said, you can't depose these people. My goodness, Dr. Fauci, he runs this country. He's far too busy to be deposed. And yet a court just late last week, I think it was on Friday, a judge rejected an attempt from several top Biden administration officials to keep them from having to testify in the lawsuit filed by Eric Schmidt. Now, this came out of a court in the, I think it was in Louisiana, Judge Terry Dougherty. And in that case, Eric Schmidt was trying to depose Anthony Fauci, Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, and former Disinformation Governance Board Director Nina Jankowski. And once the White House said, these people cannot be deposed, they're too busy, they're too important, they can't be subjected to this kind of harassment, the federal court said yes, that these people must sit for their depositions. Now, I find it interesting that the left cheered when President Trump had to be deposed in that case filed in New York. They cheered that President Trump had to sit for a deposition. But I don't think they're cheering now that Dr. Fauci is going to have to sit for a deposition, that Nina Jankowski or Jean-Pierre is going to have to sit for a deposition. They're not cheering that. But what's more important is that demonstrates the legitimacy of this lawsuit. One of the complaints against Eric Schmidt has been and continues to be. In fact, someone brought this up to me just this morning when I was talking to them on the phone. Well, how much money has Eric Schmidt wasted by filing all these frivolous lawsuits? Well, first of all, I don't think they're frivolous. And the definition of a frivolous lawsuit is not just simply one that is lost. Let me give you a great example of that. One of the things that Eric Schmidt filed a lawsuit against was St. Louis County Executive Sam Page claiming he didn't have the authority to institute mask mandates. And I said at the time, it doesn't matter whether that lawsuit is successful or not successful. It's a lawsuit that challenges the exercise of government authority, and that should always be challenged. And it turned out with Eric Schmidt's case that it was a successful challenge because the courts ruled that Sam Page did not unilaterally have the authority to institute a mask mandate in St. Louis County. And as I said at the time, and I continue to say, it wasn't about masks. It was about tyranny. That a government that exercises power and authority that's not given to it by the people, that is the definition, the quintessential definition of tyranny. And so Eric Schmidt's lawsuits were designed to be a check on the exercise of government power, and I applauded it then, and I applaud it now. But this is the same type of check and balance by saying, can the federal government use its power to order tech companies to silence your speech? And it's a brilliant concept to say, we're going to put a check and a balance on that exercise of power. And the courts, and that's why I brought up this idea and brought up this point that the courts are allowing these depositions to go forward. Because I promise you, if the court felt that this lawsuit was illegitimate, they're never going to let Dr. Fauci sit for a deposition, ever. The court would never let Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre sit for a deposition. It would never happen. And yet by allowing these individuals to be deposed, and also many others are being sent interrogatories, that's a fancy way of saying they're being sent a list of questions that have to be answered under oath and under perjury of law if they tell something that's untrue. So interrogatories are going forth, depositions are going forth. This demonstrates the legitimacy of that litigation. Just like the Court of Appeals opinion in St. Louis holding that the Biden student loan transfer of debt lawsuit can go forward demonstrates the legitimacy of that. This in the Eric Schmidt lawsuit demonstrates that this litigation is legitimate. Now, the bad part about this is that Eric Schmidt will not be able to continue going forward with this litigation because he's going to be going to Missouri as our U.S. Senator. But the next Attorney General, whoever he or she may be, will hopefully pick up that ball and carry it just as Eric Schmidt has done. Hey, we're going to take a break. Stick around on the Annie Frey Show. Brad Young sitting in on the St. Louis home for Conservative Talk, 97.1 FM Talk.
This is the Annie Frey Show. Follow Annie on Twitter at Annie Frey Show.
Rhino Shield is far superior to even the best traditional exterior house paint. Rhino Shield is 8 to 10 times thicker than paint and comes with a 25-year transferable warranty. Rhino Shield is the only ceramic coating company that has been chosen by Disney, This Old House, and 3 times on HGTV's Curb Appeal, where every episode is concentrated on unpainted brick, bonds and seals to stucco, wood, hardy, block, color lock, masonite, and more. No better product for those steel aluminum-sided homes that have become, chalky and tired looking. We coat sloped and flat roofs to extend their lives too. After 15 years, we've got a great reputation and a superior product. As long as it's affordable, why wouldn't you do it? Before you make the costly mistake of painting with traditional paint, you'd be best served to call Rhino Shield today. We are the experts and our evaluations are free. 877-25-RHINO or 877-25rhino.com. Tell them, ladies.
Don't paint, don't Rhino, go Rhino Shield. Never paint your house again. Rhino Shield.
If you own a house in St. Louis and you want to sell it as is without any inspections or need to make any repairs, call Chris Buys Homes St. Louis at 314-782-8000 or at chrisbuyshomesstlouis.com and get your cash offer without any obligation, commissions, banks, or headaches. Chris buys vacant houses, inherited houses, fixer-uppers, beautiful houses, even the tenant won't pay their rent apartment. Google Chris Buys Homes in St. Louis. That's Chris Buys Homes in St. Louis. And check out the best reviews from satisfied customers. When you sell to Chris, you decide when you want to move, according to your schedule and your terms. Go to chrisbuyshomesinstlouis.com. Google Chris Buys Homes in St. Louis or call 314-782-8000. That's 314-782-8000. And get the offer you have been waiting for. Chris Buys Homes in St. Chris Buys Homes in St. or call 314-782-8000.
Hi, George Weber. Check out my alter ego, Skip Weber, every Saturday night, 9 to 11. The Saturday Evening Rock Show, the greatest rock and roll show on a talk station in the world. Don't miss it.
At Shane Company, we know that love and meaning can be captured in a beautiful piece of fine jewelry. That's why we offer so many options to make your holiday gift even more personal. Jewelry with a birthstone makes a wonderful gift because it holds so much significance. Shane Company has unique styles with birthstones for every month of the year. Diamonds, cultured pearls, rubies, opals, and more. Why not create a necklace with her birthstone and then add a charm for good luck? A necklace with the first letter of her name lets her know how important she is to you. And our gold letter charms sparkle with diamond accents. Or select an engravable style. Give your loved one a bracelet inscribed with the place you met so they'll never forget that moment. Or capture your strong connection with a promise ring inscribed with both of your initials. Our jewelry consultants will make it easy. At Shane Company, we give you so many ways to create gifts infused with meaning. Treasures they'll have forever.
Now you have a friend in the jewelry business. Shane Company and ShaneCo.com.
Hi, this is Andy Berg, board-certified master arborist with Hanson's Tree Service. Leaving your ash trees unprotected from the emerald ash borer may lead to an unforeseen rapid decline in their health. Go to hansonstree.com to find out how we can service your trees today.
Join us at Odyssey as we all do our one thing, together millions of things for our planet. Planning a road trip this fall? Maximize your fuel economy by inflating tires to proper pressure and packing light. When we each share our one thing, it becomes a million things for our planet. What's your one thing?
You're listening to the Annie Frey Show live from the Air Comfort Service Heating and Cooling and Insulation Studio. Save up to $900 in utility rebates and see if you qualify for 0% financing on a new high-efficiency HVAC system. For details and to get into your comfort zone, visit aircomfortservice.com.
Tonight at 8, Donald Trump will be making his big announcement. What will it be? Well, I guess you'll have to listen and find out just like we will. Tonight at 8 o'clock, we'll be carrying it live here on 97.1 FM Talk.
You're listening to The Annie Frey Show on St. Louis's home for conservative talk. Find the podcast, on-demand audio, and more at 971talk.com/Annie.
That are lost and cry. Rails of sin, only evil remains.
Welcome back to the Annie Frey Show. Brad Young, Brad Range, sitting in for Annie this afternoon. Thanks for hanging around with us. There's a story that came out here that I want to get Brad Range's opinion on as well, and that is when you when you look up into the sky, and of course I drop these things on you without any preparation
all the time
because I like your reactions. You have great reactions. If I prompt you ahead of time, it wouldn't be organic.
No.
But when you look up into the sky, whether it's in the day or the night, what is it that you like to see?
Stars.
Stars at night.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like to see sunsets in the evening as the evening comes. I like to see when the planets are out because they look different than the stars and you can spot the planets. Do you ever want to see advertising in space?
That's a hard no.
That's
a hard no. I'm good. I can see advertising everywhere else. Leave it alone.
Well, and advertising has its place, as we know. It's a good thing.
I don't have a problem with advertising.
Right. But I do have a problem with space advertising. Now, why am I asking this? Because those pesky Russians, not only are those pesky Russians invaded Ukraine, apparently landed a couple of missiles inside of Poland, which was great to talk to Jim Carafano about that. Didn't you love it how I brought it up? He says, oh, yeah, I already know all about it.
I already know all about it. Yeah.
I already know all about it. The story was like 5 minutes old.
Yeah.
And Jim Carafano already knew all about it.
It gets to him before it gets to Fox News, I'm sure.
That's true. That is very true. But the Russians, there's a company in Russia that the engineers are proposing. It's a $65 million plan for space advertising. They would be with CubeSats. CubeSats are just smaller satellites. Like right now, the Starlink satellites that Musk put up are similar to CubeSats.
Right.
They're small, they're cheap, they're easy to put up. But it would be a constellation of CubeSats that would, with lasers connecting them, could put advertising in space that would go around the globe.
No.
Is that something that we need?
No. Actually, you know what that sounds like to me?
What?
That sounds like target practice for our kinetic energy weapons for enemy satellites. It's like, we're going to test it out here. Let's shoot down some advertising.
Exactly. Shoot down some advertising. And that would be a lot easier if we have satellites with lasers. Then it'd be easier to burn a hole in those puppies. But yeah, I don't think that we need advertising in space. I just don't think we need that. And especially if the Russians have $65 million to spend, they need to start saving that towards Ukrainian reparations because that's where that money needs to go. I always find it funny, Mr. Range, that when I hear Elon Musk referred to as the richest man on the planet, because actually the richest man on the planet is probably Vladimir Putin. And I don't know if you remember this, but during the Trump administration, when Russia was being accused of meddling in our elections, the Trump administration had, and this was widely reported at the time, had the CIA look into where all of his bank accounts were held. And there was an implicit threat that if you continue to meddle in our elections, we're going to disclose the amounts and the locations of your secret bank accounts. I mean, would you like to see a president do that now, to release the information regarding where his accounts are, how much are in those accounts? Because think about it, that would have a twofold impact. It would, number one, how would it anger the Russian people to know that their president has been robbing them blind since the day he took office? And secondly, it would give targets for the international community to target those accounts.
Yes.
To freeze those accounts, to use that money for future Ukrainian reparations.
Well, that's what they did to the oligarchs there when at the very beginning. Remember, they were seizing yachts.
And they still are seizing yachts, right?
Yeah.
But who's the ultimate oligarch?
Well, it's Putin.
It's Putin.
I sit here and I think about that, and it's like, well, Trump threatened that, which means that, like, there's an old saying that says that people that live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. And I wonder sometimes why some of our representatives don't use that sort of threat against crooked politicians in other countries.
Exactly.
But the possibility is, and I'm not accusing anybody of anything. This is just speculation. You think about it. If you are going to accuse somebody, you're going to set somebody out about that, you better not have any of your own. And if you're not doing it, it makes me wonder, maybe you have some of your own, and that's why you're not throwing some stones at those other ones.
Well, that's true. But why don't we hear that kind of a strategy coming from the current White House that says, because if the CIA had the capability to do that in 2017, they've got the capability to do it today. I mean, it's not like they suddenly forgot, we can't remember where those bank accounts were located.
Oh no, they know where they're at.
Of course they do.
And they know when he's shuffled money to other bank accounts. They follow that. There's no way they don't know that any longer.
Right.
And maybe they are using it. Maybe they're saying it. Maybe these are on back channel things. It's like, we know where these bank accounts are, and we're going to make that information public. If you don't, whatever, X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm. Well, what would you like to see? One of the things we talked about earlier in the show is we talked about what kind of investigations the Republicans in the White House could and will launch once they're in the majority. What would you like to see the Republican Congress look into regarding keeping the Biden White House accountable?
Oh, very, very first thing. Number one, overall, the southern border.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know if Mayorkas is doing this or if that's coming from above. And that's where my very first concern is. And then some of the other things move on down from there. I am interested in the Hunter Biden business dealings. I want to make sure that we know that whatever he was doing wasn't involving our president. I don't want it to be involving our president.
You know, I don't either. I mean, I know a lot of conservatives are giddy about it, but I don't want our president involved in illegal deals with China. I don't want that.
Right. I absolutely think the best possible scenario for that is it to be an actual nothing burger. Right. Like, there's actually no there. It looks very shady. It looks very yucky. But at the end of the day, there's no there.
But the only way to reach that conclusion is to actually investigate it.
Look into it.
You have to look into it. And talking about the border crisis, I know that there's been some discussion in Republican circles in Washington about wanting to impeach President Biden. And Kevin McCarthy has been saying, let's just slow down on that conversation. But there is discussion about possibly impeaching Mayorkas because you can demonstrate that he violated the law.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that that disappoints me about the Democrats and even Republicans who are calling for impeachment is in the English parliamentary system, they have something called a vote of no confidence, where the parliament says we have lost confidence in this leader, and that's a vote. The U.S. doesn't have anything equivalent to that. But unfortunately, many people look at this idea of impeachment as being the equivalent to a vote of no confidence. But if you look at the Constitution, it requires, in order to impeach, it requires that they commit high crimes or misdemeanors. It has to be criminal activity. And yet you look at Trump being impeached twice, there was no criminal activity there either time. And yet he was impeached twice just because he was a big orange man that nobody liked. And that was wrong. And if the Republicans in Congress come up and say, we want to impeach Biden just because we don't like him, I'm going to be consistent and say, unless you have evidence of a high crime or a misdemeanor, don't impeach the president. But we do have evidence that Mayorkas has committed crimes because federal law specifies how the border is to be protected, and he certainly hasn't done it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's my thing. I've actually had that stance for quite a while now. It's like, I'm not really interested in impeaching Biden. He hasn't done anything illegal. He's done a horrible job.
Yes.
But being a horrible president isn't illegal.
It's not illegal, and it's not an impeachable offense.
You know what else is not illegal and not an impeachable offense?
What's that?
Being a horrible person.
That's true.
So, you can look at Trump and be like, this man was a horrible person, and I don't like him. That's fair. That's a 100% legitimate take that you can make. That doesn't mean that he's impeachable.
Exactly. And you don't impeach someone based upon a phone call, and you don't impeach someone based upon statements that were clearly within the realm of freedom of speech on January 6th, and yet it was simply done as a political stunt. And to me, that defangs the whole impeachment process whenever you lower it to the level that says, we're going to use impeachment just like a vote of no confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And those two things are not synonymous. They are not morally or legally equivalent.
Well, impeachment's supposed to be a very important thing, like very solemn event. It's not a political hatchet.
Right.
And like, who were the Andrew Johnson and
Clinton, Andrew Johnson and Clinton, and then obviously Trump.
Right. Are the only presidents that have been impeached. And for the whole entire history of the United States, we had 2 impeachments. And then in one president's presidency, we had 2.
Exactly.
Which, if that doesn't tell you those weren't politically motivated, I don't know what will.
They were. But I don't want to swim in that same cesspool and say, we're going to impeach someone just because they're doing a bad job.
Right.
That's what's called a vote of no confidence. That is not what impeachment is for. And if you say they are equivalent, then you lower the importance of impeachment, because I do believe there's a case to be made for Mayorkas to be impeached. I believe that case can be made. I think there can also be a case made. I'm not saying I'm in favor of it. I'd have to look at it in more detail. But I've read analysis that suggests that there can be a case for impeachment against Merrick Garland, Attorney General. I'd have to see the evidence on it, but there's at least a case to be made. But we don't impeach the president just because we don't like him. One of the investigations you mentioned was the Hunter Biden story. And I gotta tell you, that was a story that I was late to the party on. When I first heard the Hunter Biden laptop story, I thought, come on.
It's
really
just too convenient.
He's got a kid who's like Billy Carter was to Jimmy Carter, is his brother in that situation. But you just got a wild guy that does a lot of drugs. He hangs out with hookers and strippers. And really, we really need to know what's on his laptop. I don't really care.
I was not interested in that aspect of his life.
Right. But it took me a while to see that this was, in fact, a much bigger story. Now I'm in favor of looking into it because it impacts the presidency. It's not just about Hunter Biden going to a strip club, but it's about him receiving money with the implicit promise of collusion with his dad to get the benefits of that.
Right. I mean, you take what was on his laptop plus what he wrote in his book, and there's just basically admissions. The only reason I got access to these people is because of the people I had access to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Because it's not like Hunter Biden was some financial genius. Okay. No, nobody's going to look at him and say, I really want him on my board of directors. Who would want that? I mean, unless you're like maybe a marijuana company, maybe you'd want him on your board of directors. But other than that, you wouldn't want him. But the only reason that you do want him is because of access. I know we're running out of time here, but one of the things that I would also like the Republicans to look into is really just the withdrawal from Afghanistan, because that was done in such a bad fashion. I was in favor of getting out of Afghanistan. I think we needed to get out of Afghanistan. And yet this was the poster child for how not to do it. If you're going to write a book, how not to get out of Afghanistan, this was it. This was it. And I would really like to find out who made those decisions. Did they come from the president himself? Did they come from the Joint Chiefs of Staff? Did they come from the National Security Advisor? Who made those decisions? When were they made? And why were they made? Hey, Brad Young sitting in for Annie Frey today. Thanks for hanging with us this hour. We'll be back right after this on 97.1 FM Talk.
Attention! Did you or a loved one live at or near Marine Base Camp Lejeune in North Carolina between 1953 and 1987? If so, listen closely for this important legal announcement. From 1953 to 1987, Marines and their family members at Camp Lejeune drank water that was contaminated with hazardous toxins. The toxins found in the water at Camp Lejeune may cause health issues, especially later in life. Types of health issues associated with water at Camp Lejeune are numerous. If you or a loved one lived near Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1987, you may be entitled to substantial financial compensation without going to court. Even if you were turned down in the past, a new law can allow you to file a claim today. If you or a loved one spent time near Camp Lejeune, call the Negligence Network to find out if you're eligible for financial compensation. There's no fee unless we win your case. Call 1-800-600-5536. That's 1-800-600-5536. 1-800-600-5536.
Do you know how much of your life savings you could lose in the next market downturn? Are you okay with the stock market controlling your financial future, or would you like to have more control? Hi, I'm Ken Heisey of Heisey Advisory Group. Our team can stress test your retirement portfolio and give you the confidence to enjoy your retirement without having to worry about what the stock market is doing. Call 314-328-6000 today. That's 314-328-6000 and schedule your complimentary retirement roadmap review with our team. That's 314-328-6000. Again, that's 314-328-6000.
High Z Advisory Group provides insurance services. Investment advisory services offered through AE Wealth Management, LLC. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
I'll second guest dinners with friends because they can be interrupted by diarrhea, gas, bloating, stomach pain, or oily stools. It turns out I have EPI, or exocrine pancreatic insufficiency, which means I'm missing the enzymes needed to digest food. My doctor prescribed Creon, pancrelipase, an oral prescription medication that replaces pancreatic digestive enzymes. Creon treats EPI due to cystic fibrosis, chronic pancreatitis, pancreatectomy, or other conditions.
Creon may increase your chance of fibrosing colonopathy, a rare bowel disorder. Tell your doctor if you have a history of intestinal blockage or scarring or thickening of your bowel wall, if you're allergic to pork, or if you have gout, kidney problems, or worsening of painful swollen joints. Call your doctor if you have any unusual or severe gastrointestinal symptoms or allergic reactions. Take Creon as directed by your doctor and always with food. Do not chew capsules, as this may cause mouth irritation. Other side effects may include blood sugar changes, gas, dizziness, sore throat, and cough. These are not all the side effects of Creon.
Creon is the #1 prescribed EPI treatment. Ask your doctor about Creon for EPI and visit creoninfo.com or call 800-633-9110 to learn more. That's CREONinfo.com.
KFTK FM Florissant.
Driven by the Bommarito Automotive Group.
97.1 FM Talk.
Always live on the free Odyssey app.
Ukraine. I'm Lisa Brady. Fox News reports in Poland that Russian missiles have crossed into the NATO member near the Ukrainian border after Russia launched another round of attacks on Ukraine. The Pentagon says it can't confirm that at this point.
As I mentioned, we're looking into these reports, don't have any information to corroborate them at this time, so I don't want to speculate or get into hypotheticals.
The Pentagon spokesman, Brigadier General Pat Ryder, a short time ago.
When it comes to our security commitments and Article 5, we've been crystal clear that we will defend every inch of NATO territory.
Firefighters in Poland say 2 people were killed in an explosion in an eastern village where Polish radio ZET reported that 2 stray missiles had hit. Russia denies its missiles landing in Poland. The reports in Poland blame for a sudden drop on Wall Street, though the Dow has since rebounded and is now back up more than 100 points. A judge in Georgia blocks the state's abortion law, ruling it was unconstitutional when it passed.
Georgia's abortion law bans the procedure after fetal cardiac activity is detected, typically around 6 weeks. Advocacy groups and doctors sued, arguing the law signed by Governor Brian Kemp in 2019 violated privacy and liberty rights contained in the state constitution, but also that it violated the U.S. Constitution. After the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe, a federal appeals court said the state law could be enacted. But now, Fulton County State Judge Robert McBurney has ruled that Roe was still in place in 2019, and so this law did violate the U.S. Constitution.
Fox's Jessica Rosenthal. The state attorney general can appeal. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy clearing the first major hurdle to becoming House Speaker if Republicans take control of the House. McCarthy clearing the secret ballot in a House GOP caucus meeting today. He would need a simple majority in the full House when the new Congress convenes in January. America is listening to Fox News.
Come on, we're going to be late to the cookout.
I was just packing up my famous mac and cheese.
I hope you packed the Pepto, too.
Huh?
Pepto-Bismol provides fast relief from heartburn and indigestion. You know, that uncomfortable feeling after you eat too much. And after the deviled eggs, baked beans, and barbecue ribs, you're going to need it.
Barbecue ribs? I should probably pack an extra shirt, too.
Good call.
When you have nausea, heartburn, indigestion, upset stomach, diarrhea.
Pepto-Bismol. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
Finding the right Medicare plan? Oof, no easy feat. Kind of like those dances my granddaughter loves making me do. But then I found Walgreens Find Rx coverage. Lets you compare plans online, over the phone, or in person. Made Medicare shopping so easy. Plus, I found plans with low-cost copays. I can get down with that. When you need to talk Medicare, Walgreens is here. Start shopping today at walgreens.com/Medicare.
Air Comfort Service Heating and Cooling. Weather.
The official 97.1 FM Talk Weather Center forecast for the afternoon. Some clouds and sun, a breezy afternoon. High today 47. Clear and cold tonight, low 29. Partly sunny for tomorrow, the high only 38. And then clear and cold tomorrow night, low 25. Partly sunny Sunday, the high 42. And then for Monday, partly sunny and chilly with the daytime high 47. I'm Steve Williams for 97.1 FM Talk.
Rhino Shield is far superior to even the best traditional exterior house paint. Rhino Shield is 8 to 10 times thicker than paint and comes with a 25-year transferable warranty. Rhino Shield is the only ceramic coating company that has been chosen by Disney, This Old House, and 3 times on HGTV's Curb Appeal, where every episode is concentrated on unpainted brick, bonds and seals to stucco, wood, hardy, block, color lock, masonite, and more. No better product for those steel aluminum sided homes that have become, chalky and tired looking. We coat sloped and flat roofs to extend their lives too. After 15 years, we've got a great reputation and a superior product. As long as it's affordable, why wouldn't you do it? Before you make the costly mistake of painting with traditional paint, you'd be best served to call Rhino Shield today. We are the experts and our evaluations are free. 877-25-RHINO or 877-25rhino.com. Tell them, ladies.
Don't paint, don't Rhino, go Rhino Shield. Never paint your house again. Rhino Shield.
Did you know the Missouri State Treasurer's Office holds over $1 billion of unclaimed property? That's billion with a B. Things like utility deposits or uncashed checks and other money you didn't know was missing. This is Missouri State Treasurer Scott Fitzpatrick. My office wants to return this money to rightful owners, and the average claim is $300. Search your name online 24/7 at showmemoney.com. Claiming your money is always free, so search today at showmemoney.com.
Sail with American Queen Voyages in North America's mighty rivers, Great Lakes, oceans, and expeditions to the wilds of Alaska. Call 844-744-0794 or contact your travel professional.
If you owe the IRS, you have a legal issue, and you need the Lance Drury Law Firm. We'll protect your rights. Log on at lancedrurylaw.com or call us toll-free at 888-367-6512.
Tonight at 8, Donald Trump will be making his big announcement. What will it be? Well, I guess you'll have to listen and find out just like we will. Tonight at 8 o'clock, we'll be carrying it live here on 97.1 FM Talk.
That is exactly what I needed to hear.
Thank God someone here knows what they're talking about.
That's us. That's right. Gotta love this American ride.
All right, you need to take the time and get the full picture.
Come on, turn the radio on. It's Saturday and I won't be long.
Don't get me wrong. I love the ladies. I mean, they rev my engine, but they don't belong in the newsroom. It is Anchor Man, not Anchor Lady.
What do you want from me? I'm not America's sweetheart.
Goodness sake, kid. Keep your voice down. Your father's listening to the radio.
I'm not America's sweetheart.
This is the Annie Frey Show.
Welcome back to the Annie Frey Show. Brad Young's sitting in today. Annie's out today. She'll be back tomorrow. So do not let your heart be troubled. She will be back here in the saddle tomorrow at a regular time. Of course, sitting in today, flying the plane is Brad Range. Thank you, sir, for doing that.
My pleasure.
Normally, I don't like to play clips more than once, but I've got a completely different point to make with this clip. And so earlier in the show, we played this clip from the Ann Coulter speech. She was trying to give a speech and a presentation at Cornell University. It had to be canceled. To Cornell University's credit, they've stated that they will reschedule it. They condemned the attempts to cancel and the successful attempts to cancel her presentation and have vowed to bring her back. But this is the audio. I've edited it slightly to make sure we don't get in trouble with the FCC. But here is audio from Ann Coulter's speech.
What's violent is fashion.
I've been dying to say for this entire campaign, but I really
no KKK, no fascist USA. 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 No KKK, no fascist.
Now, the thing that you can't see is you can hear these people chanting, but if you see the clip, the video, the people who are chanting are truly long-haired, dope-smoking, maggot-infested piles of human debris. They truly are, and they're heavily bearded, and even the women were heavily bearded. So my point is, and my question to you, Brad Range, how many of those people who were chanting at the Ann Coulter speech, how many of them do you think are 100% financially dependent on their parents?
Ooh, boy. I would say I would have had to seen the video of all the people that were on there, but I would say at least 75 to 80% of them.
Well, just to show you the genius of your guesstimation, because I just ask Brad Range questions. I don't necessarily prep them ahead of time. And it's really funny because a study came out just yesterday that showed that as far as Gen Zs, and Gen Zs are defined as people 18 to 25, that 54% of all Gen Zers are living at home with their parents, and 80% expect to continue to live at home with their parents over the next 2 years. So here's my question. We got these Gen Zers who are living at home, who don't mind protesting alleged fascists, even though I would challenge them to define what fascism actually is. Because they obviously don't know what fascism is if they're calling someone who's not in government a fascist.
Well, they don't know what fascism is, and if they did know what fascism is, they wouldn't be engaging in fascist behavior.
Exactly. If they want to know what fascists are, they would look at the people that they elected in the government. But my point is this, and I find this to be a fascinating idea. What's the definition in your mind of an adult?
A productive member of society who's self-sustaining.
Bingo. Okay. I've had this conversation with all three of my kids at various points in time. My youngest is at Mizzou. And when they tell me that they're an adult, I ask them, how do you define an adult? And they would always define an adult to me as saying, I'm 18. Or if I can be drafted, of course, women typically can't be drafted, but that would be the argument. If you could be drafted, then you're an adult. But adult, don't you think in adulthood, being an adult isn't so much a factor of age, but of responsibility?
Absolutely. And I think it's changed a lot over the years. I think that, well, actually, I was trying to think back, my wife's grandparents, how old they were when they set out on their own and the responsibilities that they took on.
Yes.
And like the thought of sending an 18-year-old and a 17-year-old or whatever it was out on their own to start a life together, marriage, they're going to have kids, they're going to farm, they're going to create, basically a small business. A farm's a small business. So they're going to create a small business and they're going to live and make a life for themselves that, like, I can't imagine too many 18 or 17-year-olds being ready to do that now.
No, I mean, they couldn't be ready to do that if they can't even handle hearing political opinions that they disagree with. If you can't handle hearing an opinion that disagrees with you, how are you going to handle living in the real world, paying bills, getting a job, making sure that you have a place to live, making sure that you could put food on your table by your own responsibility doing that? How are you going to do that if you can't even tolerate hearing conservative political views?
Yeah, I don't know. And let me pick your brain and put you on the spot. Why?
Oh, that's not nearly as fun.
Oh, this is fun for me now. So let's dig into this a little bit, and we look at you would agree with me with what I said that
100%.
The kids today aren't as mature as they were 50 years ago or whatever. Why? Who shoulders the blame for that?
I think a lot of that is parents, because parenting now is defined as saying, I want to shelter my kids from any adverse situations. And really what they should be doing is training them to handle adverse situations. And training them to handle those situations is completely different from sheltering them. Let me give you a great example. George Washington, in his day, when they were afraid of getting disease, I forgot which pox it was that was the big...
Isn't it smallpox?
Smallpox was the big killer in the 1700s. It was very controversial in the 1700s, but Washington and his team figured out that if we give you a little bit of cowpox, which is something that cows got, it would make you kind of sick, but it would develop antibodies that would prevent you from getting smallpox, which was deadly. So in other words, introducing you to a little bit of harm prepared you to handle something that was a great deal of more harmful. And yet parenting today is shielding you from everything rather than preparing you. Another example, Tom Brokaw wrote a fabulous book. I read it years ago, The Greatest Generation. And it was all about the World War II generation. And in that, he gave literally countless examples of how great Americans were coming out of World War II. But then when I heard him in an interview talking about his book one time, he was asked, why was that generation so great? Why was it? Was it because this group of people was just inherently better? And he said, no, it wasn't. It was because they were placed in a situations where they had to be adults and responsible very quickly. And they learned to be responsible. And then when they came out of World War II, they carried that responsibility forward. That's why the United States was the greatest country on the planet in the 50s. We had the economic machine that was unparalleled in the 60s. And so that generation was tested by fire and was proven to be gold.
Yeah.
Okay? Because of that testing process. But if you're not being tested, then there's no opportunity. There's certainly the spiritual parallel of the refining idea of fire and what's left over is gold. We're not allowing our kids today to go through that refining process.
Yeah. And it's really unfortunate to me. Whenever I was in school, for those of you who don't know, I have a degree in religious education with an emphasis on youth, which means that I am a youth minister. That was what my degree was in. But one of the big conversations we had is what is the role of a youth minister in helping, teenagers get through problems?
Sure.
And my teacher, and I'll never forget it, he used the analogy of a swimming pool. And he said, sometimes your kids who can't swim are going to jump in the deep end. But your goal as a youth minister is to not jump in and pull them out. It's to show them where the ladder is so they can get themselves out.
Exactly.
Because you're not going to be there to bail them out every time. And that's the role of a parent. So I said at the very beginning of the statement, how would you define what an adult is? And it's a mature person who contributes to society. Your goal as a parent is to work yourself out of a job. Your goal is to create somebody that can handle things on their own. And that means that sometimes you got to let your kids fall in the deep end and get themselves out. You can't just keep pulling them out every time, because if you keep pulling them out, they're never going to develop those skills to know how to help themselves when they're in the situation, when there's nobody around to save them. And the other part of that is, too, they're never going to learn how strong they actually are.
Exactly.
You learn how strong you are when you go through adversity. And I've experienced this personally in my life, and I'm sure you have as well.
We all have.
The hardest times are what dig down into you, what refine you, what show you what you're really, actually, truly made out of. And whenever you go through the hard times, then you can look back and say, I've handled that. Throw at me what you will, world. I've got this. And we're not doing that for our kids
No, we're
anymore.
not doing that at all. We're sheltering them instead of preparing them. And I can guarantee you that 75%, I agree with you 100%, that 75% of those long-haired, dope-smoking, maggot-infested piles of human debris that were screaming at Ann Coulter, they were living off the dole of the government or of their parents. Either they were getting enough money from the government that they could live in some squalor dope house somewhere, or they're living with their parents, or their parents are funding all of these activities. And they're not having to have any real adult responsibility, and yet they're more than happy to criticize Ann Coulter.
Right. They lack the adult responsibility, and they have the entitlement, and it's a toxic combination.
Oh, yeah, we hear so much about toxicity today, but that truly is toxic when you mix that idea of entitlement and you combine that into a recipe that says, I'm not self-sufficient at all, but I'm also entitled to whatever everyone needs to give me.
I'm not self-sufficient, but you should provide my sufficiency for me because I deserve it.
Exactly.
Why?
And that's the same argument if you want to morph this into tax policy. One of the conversations that I love having with folks whenever I hear the phrase, and I will jump into these conversations, like at my office or people sitting in the library, at the law library, or whatever.
At the restaurants, people in the booth behind you.
Well, I don't necessarily do that, but I do jump in when I know them somewhat, and they'll say that the rich don't pay their fair share. And I always love these conversations because I always start the conversation by asking this one great big question. Define for me what is a fair share? Just give me a definition. What is a fair share? If the rich aren't paying it their fair share, you obviously know what their fair share should be because you've already told me they're not paying it.
Right.
So what is it? Tell me what is their fair share. And to this day, Mr. Brad Range, I've never had anyone answer that.
Hard to meet a goal if you don't know what that goal is.
Exactly, because that's the point. The goal isn't to say the fair share is X percent, because next year we're going to want to raise that bar, okay? So whatever that is, the folks who are saying that rich need to pay a greater share to take care of folks who don't have any responsibility because they're not paying taxes, that creates that sense of entitlement. You know, that's the beauty of the flat tax idea, because the rich pay more, the poor pay less, but everyone pays something. Everyone has skin in the game. Everyone has some degree of responsibility. And so therefore, when you go to the ballot box, you have actually experience of saying, I'm going to base my experience, my vote, based upon my experience. Instead of going to the ballot box and saying, I want to vote for somebody else to pay more taxes so I can pay less.
Right.
And that is not responsibility. When you're saying, I want you to pay more so I can pay less, that is not being responsible.
Or so I can get some sort of...
some freebie.
Something.
Like some Obama phones. You know, I want my Obama phone. So how many people are we paying free cell phones for? Because Obama said, we'll give you free cell phones. And now the Biden administration is saying, we'll give you free student. We're going to cut your student loans. We're going to forgive your student debt. And how that sounds so sanctimonious, it's really harming those individuals who aren't learning responsibility.
Yep, absolutely.
It all does tie in. One of the things that ties in, and we're going to jump into this a little bit in this next segment. Actually, we're going to go to the third segment and talk some more about domestic extremism. But coming up in the next segment, we're going to talk to our own Hannah Gibbs. And I think she's got some things to throw at us too, doesn't she?
She does. It's a Thanksgiving food face-off is what she's got for us.
That sounds amazing. Hey, you're going to want to stick around for that coming up next on the Annie Frey Show on the St. Louis home for conservative talk, 97.1 FM Talk.
Look up, child. Hey.
The Annie Frey Show is streaming online. Watch us live on YouTube and subscribe.
Is there something really absurd that skeeves you out?
Getting a paper cut on my eyeball.
A fear you can't shake.
I'm going to leak ocular fluid down my cheeks. It's going to go into my mouth and I will perish.
Whatever scares you, I want to talk about it. Join me, Larry Mullins, on my new podcast, Your Weirdest Fears. Listen and subscribe to Your Weirdest Fears on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts from.
Nobody wants to miss the important things in life, and if it's because of bad vision, you don't have to. Mark Cox here from my friends at Brenton Vision. They can help you out. That's why I want you to take 2 minutes today to call my friends at Brenton at 314-375-2020 or go online to brentonvision.com. Your eyes are as unique as your fingerprint. Since Brenton Vision is the only place in Missouri offering all 7 forms of modern vision correction, they can create a customized treatment plan just for your vision. They helped my wife out. She chose the lens replacement therapy and now sees better than ever, and she loves it. You can have that same experience with Brenton Vision. They accept flex plans and medical spending plans as well at Brenton. So don't let that money expire or go to waste. See your best. Do what we did. Call Brenton Vision at 314-375-2020 or schedule online right now at brentonvision.com.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along, which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. You get qualified candidates fast. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter.com/radio.
Hi, my name is Curtis Barks with Complete Auto Body and Repair. In honor of our newest location in Cottleville, for any new customers, simply come into any of our 6 locations and ask us to pay the first $50, and we will. That's right. That means brakes, suspension, alignments, air conditioning, even our auto body work. Please come see our team or visit us at CompleteAB.com. If it's not perfect, it's not complete. Others can't compete with Complete Auto Body.
Dad, and service.
Oh yeah, and service.
He fixes cars.
Tonight at 8 o'clock, former President Donald Trump is making a big announcement. What will it be? Well, we'll all find out together. We don't know. We're carrying it live tonight at 8 o'clock. Former President Donald Trump's big announcement right here on 97.1 FM Talk.
This is the Annie Frey Show. Find the podcast, on-demand audio, and more at 971talk.com/Annie.
Spider-Man's control and Batman with his fist. And clearly I don't see myself upon that list. But she said,
well, we're joined in the studio by our very own Hannah Gibbs. Hey, Hannah, great to see you.
Oh, nice to see you as well.
So you've got something on your plate. If I'm making a joke here, you've got something on your plate here you want to talk about?
Yes. So today I am bringing you the Thanksgiving food face-off. So I want both of you, as well as our listeners, to weigh in on this. A website recently conducted a one must go poll on Thanksgiving foods. This could instigate some family fights. So let's see.
Oh, let's fight over food. Let's have a food fight.
It's a food fight. Exactly. I'm not afraid of a good food fight. So bring it on. Oh, as President Biden would say, I've got 2 words for you. Bring it on.
All right. So you have to pick which one must go, and then I'll read you the results of what this poll said. All right. So the first one is between stuffing and mashed potatoes. Which must go?
Oh, no. Oh, no. Those are 2 of my favorites. I'm going to send stuffing on its way.
I also would vote to drop stuffing.
Well, here I'm going to go on a technicality here because you only said mashed potatoes, which doesn't imply gravy. You only said mashed potatoes. So if we're talking about naked mashed potatoes here, okay, because you did not mention gravy.
I did not mention gravy.
Okay, so if it's naked mashed potatoes, it's got to go. I got to have the gravy. So in the absence of gravy on the mashed potatoes, I'm going with the stuffing.
All right. From the poll, 62% of the people would drop stuffing. 38% would give up mashed potatoes.
I know, but did they understand the one? Did the people who were being polled understand that it wasn't a combo of mashed potatoes and gravy, but was truly only mashed potatoes?
But
I don't know if they understood
it's Thanksgiving. Gravy's the default. It's
I know, but it didn't say that.
You don't say turkey and gravy, but you put gravy on the turkey.
Gravy is involved in this poll later on.
I think the poll's rigged. I think it's rigged. And the whole thing needs to be thrown out.
All right, you're with the 38, Brad Young. Brad and I are with the 62% of the people. All right, next one. To me, this seems a lot easier. Apple pie versus pecan pie.
Apple.
Apple.
Apple must go?
No, apple is my pie.
So
yeah. Pecan's got
to go. Pecan has got to go.
We are all in agreement. 70% of the people said they would give up pecan pie.
Yes.
So that is accurate with us so far.
There's still probably a good 10 to 15% of people out there is like, where's the pecan pie?
Pecan. Well, my sisters love that. And I just think that's a waste of calories. I really do.
Yep. All right. Next one. This might cause a fight in between the studio here.
Well, I've got my pocket knife. So I am armed right here. It's a 1-inch blade, and it's even got scissors on it. So I'm ready. Let's go.
All right. Brussels sprouts versus glazed carrots. Which one must go? There's one right answer to this.
Oh. Can I say both? Gotta go?
Pick one.
All right. Brussels sprouts gotta go.
Okay. Brad Young?
I know the poll is going to say Brussels sprouts has to go. So
yes, as it should. 59% of the people said they would drop Brussels sprouts over glazed carrots. That is the correct answer.
I know. But before you move on, have you ever been to Cooper's Hawk restaurant in
No, but I've
Town
heard
Country?
of it.
Okay. You go there. If you get the Brussels sprouts, I will reimburse you. I will pay. I will personally. I'm just talking to Hannah. I'm not talking about everybody in the audience. I will pay you back for the Brussels sprouts because I used to hate Brussels sprouts.
Yeah.
Until I got them at Cooper's Hawk. They're delicious because they don't taste like Brussels sprouts.
What do they taste like?
I don't know what they do to it. There's some kind of magic pixie dust that they sprinkle on their Brussels sprouts.
Butter.
And they are delicious.
Woo, the secret sauce.
So if you buy them,
okay,
you tell me, I'll reimburse you.
Yeah, my stance
Sounds
on
like a deal.
My stance on vegetables remains unchanged. Vegetables taste like sad.
Not all of them.
Now
Name one that doesn't.
the Brussels sprouts that my mom made were disgusting. I will. So that's why I said, "Yep, they
Sorry,
gotta
Mom.
go." Sorry, Mom, they gotta go. But the Brussels sprouts at Cooper's Hawk, delicious.
All right, Brad Young, this one's for you.
Oh,
Gravy versus cranberry sauce. Which one has to go?
which one has to go? Cranberry sauce.
Yeah,
Brad?
I agree. Cranberry sauce can go.
So do 72% of the people. They said
There
they
you
would
go.
drop cranberry sauce.
Oh yeah, because you gotta have gravy. It's not Thanksgiving without gravy.
All right.
Now, before you move on,
Okay.
I saw a meme and I sent it to a friend of mine. It was because you always use gravy boats at Thanksgiving, right?
Right.
Somebody had a gravy boat that was in the shape of a cat.
No.
It was a white gravy boat.
No.
Oh.
And the mouth of the cat was open, so when you poured the gravy, it was coming out of the cat's mouth.
That's better than the other way
And
around.
then when I sent it to a friend of mine, he wrote back and said, "At least it's coming out of the mouth." Exactly.
All right.
So, yes.
Next one to me seems I would have struggled to vote on this. Cornbread versus potato rolls.
Cornbread has to stay, so potato rolls have to go.
I'm gonna be with Brad on that one. Nothing like a good cornbread, but
This was a close one.
For you
60
or just in the poll?
The poll and for myself. 60% of the people said they would give up cornbread.
Who would give up cornbread?
I don't know. Cornbread is great.
With butter? Put a big slab of butter on the cornbread?
Can I ask you guys a question?
Oh, my
Your
goodness.
cornbread, when you make cornbread, is it sweet?
Yeah.
I've had it sweet and non-sweet, and I like them. It doesn't matter to me.
I like them both. I grew up, it was always sweet when I grew up. My mom would serve it to us. She'd almost make like a breadstick out of it, and she'd serve it to us, and we'd have a little bit of syrup to dip it in.
Oh, yeah.
But my mother-in-law is from Arkansas, and her cornbread isn't sweet. And if you're not expecting it, and you've always had, you always had it, you're like kind of offset. But it is awesome either way. I like them both ways.
Who cannot like cornbread? It's a staple.
Well, those people that voted against it aren't saying that they dislike cornbread.
But they would drop it over potato rolls.
They just prefer potato rolls.
All right, next one. Baked sweet potatoes versus pumpkin pie. What one would you drop?
Did you say
Mr. Range?
Baked sweet potatoes versus
Baked
pumpkin?
sweet potatoes versus pumpkin pie.
Oh, that's easy. Drop the baked sweet potatoes.
Yep, same here. I'm going with the pumpkin pie.
Pumpkin pie is it.
I'd drop pumpkin pie.
You what?
I'm not a fan of pumpkin pie.
What kind of drink did you bring in today?
I was drinking a pumpkin coffee today. A little PSL.
You nailed it. So you would drop pumpkin pie, but you're sipping pumpkin latte, whatever.
Yes.
So you don't like pumpkin pie?
No.
Or like not at all? Like
Nope.
you for real don't like it?
Yep.
Now, see, I got a theory. Let me ask you about this.
Okay.
I got a theory. When you've had pumpkin pie, has it been store-bought or homemade?
Store-bought.
Okay, this is what I'm getting at. Store-bought pumpkin pie uses more pumpkin because pumpkin is cheap, particularly when it's made with other types of squash. It's cheap, so that's the main ingredient. Homemade pumpkin pie, like my mother-in-law makes, which is it's fabulous. The trick is using less pumpkin, where you still get the pumpkin
then is
flavor.
pumpkin pie even that good if you're not even wanting to do the pumpkin?
Well, but you want the flavor. You don't want it to be overpowering. And store-bought pumpkin pie has more pumpkins in it because it's cheap and it's overpowering. So I suspect that if you will try pumpkin pie that's homemade, you'll probably like it.
Oh man, my mother-in-law
More
makes
than a baked
great
sweet
pie.
potato.
Yeah.
I wonder.
And then when you do that, you're going to think, Brad Young is a genius. You're going to think that. Now, no one else ever says that or thinks that, but you will think that.
All right, last face-off here, which I also think could be pretty difficult.
Uh-oh.
Sweet potato casserole versus green bean casserole. What one has to go?
Oh, Mr. Range?
I'm going to send the sweet potatoes on their way.
You're going to send it on your way?
Me
green
too.
bean casserole.
Yeah, me too. But, boy, green bean
Brad
casserole.
Young couldn't even answer that. He's like, someone else go first.
Well, I would kind of jettison both of them because green bean casserole is to me, it's kind of goopy. But you got to get rid of the sweet potato.
It's goopy, but I don't really like sweet potatoes.
No,
and
I
they're
don't
supposed
either.
to be like really good for you.
I love sweet potatoes.
But every now and then I'll substitute aside like with sweet potato fries. Do you guys like sweet potato fries?
Oh my gosh, I love sweet potato
Those
fries.
are good. I like those.
So I went to this place called Flip Burger, and it was in Atlanta. And I was like, all right, I'll try the sweet potato fries. And when they served their sweet potato fries, you know what they served it with for a side?
No idea.
Dipping sauce? Blue cheese dressing.
Blue cheese.
What?
Yeah, that's what everybody says. And I'm like, stop. Just try it.
Delicious, huh?
This is making me very
It's
hungry.
amazing.
I've never had
Tell
that.
me about it.
All right, 58% of the people claim they drop sweet potato casserole over green bean.
That is an interesting.
Now I'm ready
idea.
for Thanksgiving.
Now, so what's your favorite, Hannah Gibbs? What's your favorite food at Thanksgiving?
See, my favorite food wasn't even on the list,
Which
but
is
maybe
what?
it's not a Thanksgiving traditional food. Why am I blanking on they're called party potatoes. Like it's basically a potato casserole.
Oh, with the cornflakes on top?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, at my house, we call those wake potatoes because that's what people would take when somebody's dead. And you take it, and they're having a wake, and you take them this casserole. So we call them wake potatoes. But yeah, it's a potato casserole with the cornflakes on top.
Yes, and the cheese.
Oh,
that is
aren't
my
those good?
favorite Thanksgiving
Those are delicious.
food / Christmas food / Easter food because it's at every holiday.
Or funeral food.
Or funeral food. Yeah, that's my
Exactly.
favorite. But if I had to pick traditional, I'd probably say the green bean casserole. I like casseroles, I guess.
So
What's your guys' favorite?
This is a no-brainer for me. This is super easy. It's turkey. And if you
Both
especially
of you agree on that?
I know.
Especially if it's smoked. Smoked
Oh.
turkey is the best. And I'm going to try that this year. I'm going to try smoking a turkey.
Well, the problem with smoking a turkey is keeping it lit. You have to really inhale a lot to keep that
and
turkey
you gotta
going.
keep turning it
You
so
gotta
it
keep-
burns evenly.
Oh yeah, exactly. But turkey is my favorite. Have you ever had Hannah? Have you ever had deep fried turkey?
No.
Well, that's
It looks like I
life-changing.
need to try a lot of things.
That's life-changing.
It is.
I can't
'Cause
have
when-
it anymore, but man.
When I know, but once you eat that, you're like, oh my goodness, where has this been all my life? But here's the problem. I got a good friend of mine. I won't mention his name. He's a police officer in the county, and he was deep frying a turkey. Now, to deep fry a turkey, Hannah, you've got to have a great big fryer with about 10 gallons of oil.
Whoa!
To put the turkey in, right? The problem is, how do you, if you buy a turkey at the store and you're going to keep it for a while, what do? You freeze it. When you pull something out of the freezer, what is on the turkey?
Ice.
Ice.
Yeah.
If you
I feel like I'm being tested.
well, you're getting it right, okay? But if you drop a 10 or 15 pound turkey that's frozen with ice crystals on it into boiling oil, what happens?
Boom.
Boom.
Yeah.
It becomes volcanic, okay? So this buddy of mine who's a police officer, he might be listening, so I won't mention his name, but he drops this turkey into this fryer on his wooden deck on the back of his house. It's Mount Vesuvius with this thing.
How's he like his new house?
The oil comes shooting out like a volcano. It sets his deck on fire. And when the fire department shows up and they see it's a police officer, this day, they tease him because, there's always this rivalry between the police and the fire. and they still tease him because the back of his house burned off. So he had to have it wasn't funny, but he got a really nice new addition on his house.
I was going to say he was okay, right?
Oh, he's completely fine.
Okay.
And insurance bought him a new back to his house. It's lovely. But to this day, the firefighters tease him to no end.
That's your PSA for today, guys. Just make sure that whenever you go to deep fry your turkey this Thanksgiving,
you
thaw it and don't put the fryer in your house. No, because you will set your house on fire.
So there seems to be on our live stream in the comments a new debate has broken out.
Uh-oh.
Hunter commented saying that he prefers ham over turkey on Thanksgiving, and so now there's a team ham,
team turkey.
No. Team ham is heresy.
It's wrong.
Hey,
they're just
I'm
wrong.
Team ham.
Oh no!
Well, then you're a heretic.
I am always going to pick ham over turkey.
Yeah, but it's not Thanksgiving.
That's right. You can have it as a meal, but the turkey is quintessentially Thanksgiving.
Right.
Have both.
What's your Christmas go-to? What's your entree for Christmas?
We've had a lot of ham at Christmas.
Yeah, ham is very popular. One of the things I want to try, because I've read about it in all like the Charles Dickens and stuff like that, is a Christmas goose. I want to try goose for Christmas.
I've had that because growing up as a kid in Southern Illinois, my dad and I, we hunted all the time. Geese was the big thing that we hunted. So every Christmas we would have geese that I actually shot, and we cooked it for Christmas.
That's awesome.
Now, two things. Number one, it's delicious. But number two, it's a dentist's delight.
Yep, because there's BBs in it.
Because there's BBs in there, right? And no matter how much time you spend finding the BBs, there's always one that you don't get. And you bite down and you think, oh, I'm going to the dentist. So then I think that's why the American Dental Association recommends hunted geese for Christmas, because that makes their January very busy.
Very, very profitable.
Very profitable for the American Dental Association.
Quick Rick from YouTube said, no, do not ham it up on Thanksgiving Day. Thanksgiving is about tradition.
Absolutely. There you go. You got to have turkey. Come on. It's not Thanksgiving without turkey. Thank you, Hannah. Thanks for sharing
You're welcome. That was fun.
Oh,
Thank
that
you
was
to all
fun.
of our listeners for commenting with us about the Thanksgiving food face-off.
And we'll forgive you for being wrong about the turkey versus ham. We'll forgive you. You know what? It's forgiveness. And that's what it means. You're wrong, but we'll forgive you.
You're wrong, and we'll give thanks that we're able to forgive you.
Exactly, because everyone can't be as smart as Brad Range and I. It can't happen.
It's the Brad.
It's the name.
It's the name. So we'll forgive you, and then we'll mock you mercilessly about it. Hey, we've got a little bit more time here on the Annie Frey Show. Stick around. Hey, we'll be right back.
Just something I can turn to, somebody I can kiss.
The Annie Frey Show is streaming online. Watch us live on YouTube and subscribe.
Oh, I want something just like this. Oh, I want something just like this.
I'm back to doing what I love and more. Thanks to the Good Feet store.
The pain was so bad, it felt like I was walking on knife blades. It took my life away. And my doctor recommended that I go to Good Feet. I took about 4 steps. I started to cry. It was the first time that I had no pain. I'm not an actor. I want people to know, whether you're young or old, these are life-changing. I've tried the rest. The best is Good Feet. I'm ready to rock and roll, man. Let's go to the ballpark. We're going to Monster Jams. We're going camping. My attitude's changed. I'm a happier man. I'm like a regular dad now. The kids have seen that change and that confidence in dad, and they like the new dad.
Call 314-317-9494 or visit one of our 2 locations on Olive, Catty Corner from TGI Fridays, or in Shiloh, Illinois, across from Deerbergs.
Thanks to the Good Feet store.
Individual results may vary. Consult your physician for medical conditions. Visit the website goodfeetstlewis.com. Come in and try the Good Feet feeling today. Comfort, energy, performance, and pain relief at the Good Feet store.
Hi, this is Thomas Helbig with the Retirement Advisory Group.
Hi, I'm Bob Kershaw, Tom's nephew. As a family business, we are committed to protecting your retirement, whether you're nearing retirement or already retired. What if it were possible to protect you from market downturns without having to make an emotional decision to buy or sell? What if you could take advantage of a strategy that would automatically take you out of harm's way during the bad years and position you for the growth opportunity during the good years?
The secret is in linking safely to the market without putting your principal at risk. By linking to the market instead of owning the market, You can participate safely on autopilot and lock in your gains without creating a taxable event. Go online at retirementkey.com for a no-obligation retirement review. Learn the strategies that have helped our clients retire with confidence for the past 36 years. And just for coming in, you'll get a copy of our latest edition book, Your Key to a Worry-Free Retirement. So go online at retirementkey.com. That's retirementkey.com.
Visit Shane Company. We have the largest selection of natural diamonds and lab-grown diamonds in all shapes and sizes, each one hand-selected for its beauty.
Now you have a friend in the jewelry business. Shane Company and ShaneCo.com.
You wouldn't trust a butcher to babysit your pet pig. You wouldn't trust a lumberjack to repair your antiques. Or a professional wrestler to be your massage therapist. So why would you trust anyone but AMCO to fix your car? For over 50 years, we've been the trusted experts in transmission repair.
AMCO offers easy payment plan options for most any credit situation, so you can fix it fast and pay it off slow at AMCO.
AAMCO.
You're listening to the Annie Frey Show live from the Air Comfort Service Heating, Cooling, and Insulation Studio. Air Comfort Service now offers insulation services. Did you know 9 out of 10 homes are under-insulated? Increase your energy savings and comfort with better insulation. For details, visit aircomfortservice.com.
The Mark Reardon Show.
Jim Carafano from the Heritage Foundation.
They asked, well, what are you going to do differently? He said, nothing. Joe Biden has 2 years of failed China policy, and his answer is, I'm going to give you 2 more years of failed China policy.
Weekdays from 3 to 6.
St. Louis's home for conservative talk.
This is the Annie Frey Show. Follow Annie on Twitter at Annie Frey Show.
We've had some fascinating conversations going on YouTube with the show, and one of them was from Quick Rick, who posted about, well, what did he say, Brad? You read it.
He said he's from the Ozarks originally, and he's had like fried squirrel and fried chicken, or not fried chicken, everybody's had fried chicken.
Yes.
But he's had fried rabbit and stuff like that. But then he said on another comment, I'm still a little reluctant to try armadillo, though.
Armadillo. I don't even know how you would eat an armadillo. I don't even know. And I don't know if you would want to.
Hard no. I mean, maybe if I'm starving.
Yeah, hard no. I'd say not impossible. If you get hungry enough, you'll eat anything. But yeah, armadillo would be a hard no for me as well. But I have had. Have you ever had fried squirrel?
I've not fried squirrel. I don't know that I've ever had squirrel though, to be honest with you.
I've had a lot of fried squirrel, and it's good. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not gamey at all. I don't have a problem with it. But one of the things when I was a kid, my dad and I would go hunting not possums. We would go hunting groundhogs because the farmers in Southern Illinois would love you to kill the groundhogs because they can tear up a bean field.
They're the worst.
They'll just pick a soybean field dry and pick it clean rather. And so as my dad and I were shooting with a 30-06, we're shooting groundhogs at about anywhere from 50 to 150 yards and watching them explode.
I was gonna say, is there anything left?
With a 30-06, it explodes. And when we do that, my dad said to me once, he said, "You don't ever want to eat a groundhog because they taste awful." And I said, "It sounds like you're speaking from experience." And he said, "I never want to discuss it again." So I don't even know what the story is about him eating a groundhog. But I will tell you, though, speaking of hunting, I will tell you a quick story because we just had Veterans Day last week. My dad served in Korea.
Okay.
My dad's job in Korea was gun repair. And so people would come in, their guns, whatever size guns they were busted, malfunctioning, damaged, whatever. He would repair them. So one day, as my dad would tell the story, a tank comes in, and they had a 50 caliber machine gun on the tank that was not operational. And so after my dad fixed it, he told the commanding officer, "I need you to assign me a driver to go drive around so I can test the 50 caliber to make sure it's working." Sure, do that. So my dad tells the story of driving through the hills of North Korea with a 50 caliber hunting rabbits. He said we shot up a bunch of rabbits. Now, a 50 caliber round is about 8 to 10 inches long.
Yeah.
It's a small missile is what it is.
Yeah.
And if you hit a rabbit with a 50 caliber round, the only thing left is pink mist.
Yeah.
When you hit it with a 50 caliber round.
Cavitation is a real thing.
Oh, it was just nothing left. So after my dad passed away, after telling the story his entire life, after he passed away, we're cleaning out my dad's house, and I found, and I'll show you after the show, we found a picture of him. Somebody took a picture of him in the tank behind the 50 caliber in Korea, but he never told me he had a picture. I just happened to find it when we were cleaning out the house, so I know the story's true. But I still, to this day, can't imagine what would happen if you hit a rabbit with a 50 caliber round.
Fear the pink mist.
Oh, fear the pink mist. Well, speaking of guns, one of the things that's this breaking news today, we already talked about earlier, the breaking news with the Russian missiles. But the other breaking news that has been announced here within the last hour is that Texas Governor Greg Abbott has declared that his state is under an invasion. I'm not making this up, that they're under an invasion, and he has invoked the special powers granted to him as the governor under the U.S. and the Texas Constitution because of the problems on the border. And this is exactly what he said. I'm quoting, "I have invoked the invasion clause of the U.S. and Texas Constitutions to fully authorize Texas to take unprecedented measures to defend our state against an invasion." And that's an unquote from Texas Governor Greg Abbott. Now, in that spirit, and there's no question that our borders have more holes than Swiss cheese. And yet with that, this is what DHS Secretary Mayorkas said about the border as recently as this week.
Do you continue to maintain that the border is secure?
Yes, and we are working day in and day out to enhance its security, Congressman.
Right. So it's secure. The secretary says it's secure, and yet we have not only millions coming across the border unchecked, unaccountable. We don't know who they are. We don't know if they're refugees from Guatemala. We don't know if they're drug lords from Mexico. We don't know if they're terrorists from the Middle East. We have no idea. And in light of that, it's so bad that Texas governor has had to literally declare it as an invasion. But yet when asked about what's the greatest threat to our country, Mr. Brad Range, this is what Mayorkas had to say.
Mr. Chairman, that continues to be our assessment in the Department of Homeland Security, that domestic violent extremism, particularly through lone actors or small groups loosely affiliated, are spurred to violence by ideologies of hate, anti-government sentiments, personal grievances, and other narratives propagated on online platforms.
So, Brad Range, what do you think in light of the fact that literally Greg Abbott in Texas had to invoke the invasion clause of the U.S. and Texas Constitution? Mayorkas has said not only is the border secure, but the greatest threat that we face as a country is the threat from domestic terrorism. What do you think about that?
That's a convenient excuse to use for why you're not securing the border, I guess. I think the idea, like, if you stop and you look and you say, well, how many domestic terrorism attacks have we had? How many have we had? I know a lot of people like to point to the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping, but I don't know if you've been following those cases. Those cases are falling apart because of entrapment.
Exactly.
The thing is like, I forget. I think it was Bill Malugin from Fox News that was reporting on this a couple of weeks ago. He was talking about the number of people on the terrorist watch list that had been captured at the border during the course of the Biden administration. It was something like 98, and over I think it was from Bush to Trump, the total number of known terrorists on the watch list caught at the border was something like 20. So during those less than 2 years of the Biden administration, we've had 98 people caught. Now, those are the ones that we caught. There's the amount of people that get across the border, and then there are the people that they call the getaways, the people that don't get caught, and we don't know who that is. But what you can see is there's an influx of people on the terror watch list coming into the United States. So I don't know how they can look and say the biggest threat is domestic terrorism when you've got people on the literal terror watch list trying to get in through this porous southern border.
Or you have an actual invasion that's occurring. Any way you want to define invasion, it's happening. Now, I had the opportunity to interview a couple of weeks ago a person from the Heritage Foundation, and she actually went to the border, stayed there at the border for a period of about a week, interviewed people, interviewed sheriffs, interviewed police officers, interviewed migrants coming across the border. And when I interviewed her about her firsthand experience, there was a perspective here that I had not heard before, that there are essentially two groups of people who come across the border, those who want to be caught and those who don't. And from her perspective, it was about 50-50. So when people come across, like, for example, they're wandering in people's backyards in Texas, and when the cops show up, the first thing they do is their hands go up. They want to be caught because the policies of the Biden administration under catch and release say that we catch you and then we're just going to either let you go or we're going to ship you to other places of the country so that you can populate Chicago, Colorado, elsewhere. Those people actually want to get caught. The people who don't want to get caught are the ones who are criminals, have criminal backgrounds, are carrying drugs, are coyotes for other people who are smuggling them across the border. And those people, the Border Patrol is so understaffed that they cannot catch those people. So literally the only people who are being stopped at the border are those who actually want to be captured so they can be repopulated in the United States. Anyone who doesn't want to be caught isn't being caught.
Yeah. And a big reason for those ones that not wanting to get caught aren't getting caught is because of like you said, the understaffing, but that staff that is there, they're all dealing with processing those that do get caught that want to be caught.
Yes.
Because like you said, the plan is it's catch and release. What we're saying is you show up, we catch you, we're like, all right, you can't be here. You're like, well, amnesty. And they're like, all right, here's your court date. And they have to process it. They give them a court date and they send them in and they say, come back for your court date.
And I would love to know what percentage of those folks actually show up.
Well, you don't have them looking for more judges to process these court dates, do you?
Yeah, no one's hiring judges to process this. But it is a problem. And it's a problem that frequently in this country, when we send politicians to Washington, whether it's Republican or whether it's Democrat, so often, actually more often than not, neither party wants to fix this problem for two reasons, as far as I can tell. Number one is there is an interest on both sides to have illegal immigration. You've got the country club Republicans who like the cheap labor. You've got the Democrats who are looking for future voters. And so they both have a common interest to allow illegal immigration in this country. Secondly, and we see this a lot today with wedge politics, having an issue to run on is more important than solving the problem.
There's a lot of that goes on.
Okay? So if suddenly the immigration problem were solved, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, now you lose that as a political issue to harangue your opponents every 2 to 4 years.
Yeah.
So there becomes this built-in self-interest, whether it's because of you wanting illegal immigrants or whether you want the issue to argue politically. Either way, that's the biggest reason why we've been dealing with this issue since the Reagan administration and nothing ever seems to get solved. And I'm very hopeful that when the Republicans officially take charge of the House of Representatives and they start investigations, that you will see meaningful change when it comes to this problem at the border, this crisis at the border, because up to this point, all we've gotten are empty promises from both sides of the aisle. Hey, Brad Young, I've been sitting in with you today on the Annie Frey Show. Annie should be back tomorrow, Lord willing, and she'll be back in a regular time slot. Obviously, we've got Mark Reardon coming up next. Stick around. I'll be joining Mark in the show in the first hour to talk about several issues. So stick around on 97.1 FM Talk.
So be
Congress has authorized trillions in new spending, along with doubling the size of the